Hey now, what's happening, everybody? How y'all doing? It's 2023. It was 2023 last week, I guess, just barely, but here we are. I just made myself a big-ass strong coffee, and it's delicious. And ready to rock and roll. Clay says, did Pete ever reschedule with Ben Coombs? We did a special show, actually, on, I believe it was Wednesday of last week, and it was really fun. Hi, Ben. How's it going? It was really nice, actually. Did some good chatting. I'm just fixing one little thing here that I got to change on the stream, and then it should be all good. As long as you guys can hear me okay and stuff, just confirm that you got good audio and stuff. Yeah, cool. Looks like it. Looks like it. And what are you guys talking about out there? Here, just 2 seconds here. I'm just going to change something on the stream, and then I'm good to chat. There we go. Greetings from Philadelphia, says Bob. We got Hip Metal Works. We got Caleb. What's up, dude? We got Charles. We got Dan. Of course, Ben's here. Peter. Ferd. And Les and James. So many people. Great to have y'all. Still just finishing a video for this, the Revolt from Two Notes. So I'd hope to get that out by like Friday, but I wanted to mention something, which is that if you ever have an issue where it seems like, why is Final Cut Pro or why is Logic working so slow or anything where you're using an external hard drive, check the cable on your hard drive. I had a hunch. But you know what I'm talking about, these kinds of cables that come out of. So I use these really fast SSD drives. By the way, this is what I recommend, these Samsung T5s or T7s. These are great fast drives for doing any kind of video editing or audio recording or whatever you're doing. That's a terabyte Samsung. But these cables, not all created equal. And I was using a cable that was a USB-C to a USB-A, I guess, or is it USB, whatever the big flat one is, to go into my old iMac. And it was, I thought, I don't know about this cable. It feels a little cheap. I don't even know where it came from. But anyway, it was a slow-ass cable, and I put another cable on, and everything came to life. But I was getting, like, while I was working on tracks, I was getting, like, even just using Logic, I was getting, like, disk too slow errors and things like that last week using this cable. And I did a bunch of work like that where the computer was just slow. Even, moving video onto, off of SD cards onto the drive into Final Cut libraries and stuff. It was like taking forever. And then editing was impossible. Finally replaced the cable on the drive, and it was like, that was it. So just a good thing to double check if you're having issues with speed and your computer. What else have we got here? Let's see. How do you take your coffee? It varies, but I like lots of different. I mean, I like snobby coffee these days. I like kind of medium dark roasts, I think is my favorite, but not too dark. And then I put a little. I use almond milk these days because it seems to mess with my belly the least. But I like almond milk lattes, cappuccinos, stuff like that. And then when I'm here, I just throw some, what's it called? Nut Pods. I use Nut Pods almond coconut milk blend, I think it is, for a creamer. And then I throw some agave in there. Agave. Rock and Rolling says, when you go to Europe, do you ship your guitars or take them with you? It depends on the gig, but generally speaking, if it's a full tour, everything gets cargoed over there. So the other day, a cartage company came and picked up my guitars and my rack and my amp and everything I'm sending over for tour. It all goes to a company will make a carnet, which is like a passport for your gear, basically. So the gear that leaves the country, when it comes back in, there's paperwork that shows that it's all the same. Nothing was sold, nothing was bought, all that kind of stuff. And the cargo companies will tend to sort of assist in that. And we used one last year that seems like they do a lot of work with cargo going to Britain. and everybody that works there sounds English. And they did the carnet, and they did a great job. Pickup was easy. Everything came back great. So we used them again this year. And so, yeah, long story short, I just get it all ready. I make a list of everything with as many serial numbers as I can find for things. And, pedal board, here's what's on the board, a four-space rack, here's what's in the rack, all that stuff, all itemized. Send that to the freight company. I believe they're called Freight Minds is the company that we used. Another one is Rocket Cargo. That's one that you'll often see used. Rocket Cargo. They do a lot of music stuff, shipping gear all over the world. And then basically everything gets palleted, I think. Everything gets put on a big pallet and, probably plastic wrapped up in a pallet. And then it all gets slid onto a cargo plane or onto a regular plane that does cargo and gets unwrapped on the other end. And probably somebody at customs just barely looks at it and they send it off. So, what else have we got here? Pete's giving away one of the tunes for Classic Rock Show. No, I didn't. I know which one you mean, but I didn't. Robert says, any Overdrive fans out there got to try a Bondi Sick Ass yesterday. That's a great pedal. It is true. Yeah, it's a really nice, basically like a Klon, kind of on the early side of Klon style. There's so many of them out there now, but it's was out a long time ago. I mean, 2011, 2012, that pedal was out, and I used it on my pedal board for quite a while that was maybe the first Klon style pedal, actually, come to think of it, that I used as a solo boost. And really good with a bass and treble control. And so a little more control over the tone than a regular one. This will be my first tour in a while. I'm using a different one. I'm using the Unobtainium from Crazy Tube Circuits in place of my trusty old Rocket Archer, which is an amazing pedal. And I'll always appreciate the Rocket Archer, just a terrific pedal. Craig's up in Medicine Hat, Alberta. What's up, man? And we got Simto here in Denmark. That's a lovely place. Question about the Freakout pedal here. How do you have it set and where in your chain is it? I tend to like the last or second to last setting on which feedback voicing. The last one seems very natural to me, or second to last. Sorry. So it's at about 3 o'clock. It's pointing at the control that controls the type of feedback. 3 o'clock. And then I usually set the volume at about just 1/4 or maybe 10 o'clock. Doesn't need to be much louder than that. And then the onset control I'll have maybe 10 o'clock as well, or 11 o'clock, so that it kind of fades in with a bit of a gradual thing. That seems the most natural. And then I set it to be momentary so that I can just stand on it, and it comes on only when I'm standing on it, and then stops when I take my foot off. That's how I do it. David says, are we going to see the PT50 this year? If you can disclose, will it have IR reactive load feature of the PT15? I hope that I don't think it would be released this year, to be honest. It would probably be, my guess, if I had to guess, would be around NAMM time of next year. Because it's not in development. It's in development, but it's fairly far along in development. But it's not like there's a working prototype or anything. But I know John has budgeted time. He's promised me he's budgeted time. Sorry, I know there's some super chats there. I'm going to grab them in just a sec, I promise. But he's got time budgeted, and he's got time budgeted in February, I think, to kind of set aside time to work on it and put it together. So that seems promising. And we basically know what we want, but then it just takes a while to gear up and make them. So I think, without giving away too much, I mean, it's possible we do the impulse response thing on this one. But last time, what we did with the PT15 was actually release one that had the IRs in it first, and then we did the non-IR version second. I think this time, maybe just go simple and just do an amp head without the IRs. I'm not saying that's what's going to happen, but I'm saying that's kind of the way that I feel like leaning. Let's just do a great simple 50 watt 3-channel. A lot of people have load boxes. A lot of people have ways to do IRs and stuff. They've either got the reactive load, or they've got a cap direct, or they've got the different ways that they like to do it. So it's like it's pretty intense putting that into the amp, and it adds a fair amount of cost. So thinking maybe just go simple amp to start, and then see how the demand is, and then but planning for doing the IR thing, in other words, leaving space and making it an easy thing that could be integrated into the amplifier, the chassis design, and the front panel and stuff like that, because that's easy to do. We've got a nice, I feel like the way that we did it was really great, like with the push button, you know, it's kind of elegant. I feel like the way that it is in the PT-15, it seems to work well. Tell me what you think. So, you know, planning ahead to kind of do that, but I mean, I think initially we just put the amp out, you know. Yeah. There's also a little bit more involved with the load in a 50-watt amplifier than there is in a 15-watt amplifier. You know, you're just talking about more parts and stuff to be able to handle it and stuff. So, yeah. Daniel says he's looking at the PT-15 with boost on channel 2-3. Would it get into 80s hair metal? Easily. Yeah. I mean, yeah, easily. It's got plenty of gain even without a boost, but yeah. Have I tried an amp called, this is from, or sorry, an app from sorry, I'm screwing this all up. Dakota Barrett says, have you tried this app called the N-Track Studio? It's amazing. I haven't. What does it do? Tell us about it. Tell us in the chat what you like about it. I read somewhere, says Paul, that John Suhr built the pickups on Jeff Beck Strat. That is true. Do you know anything about that? Yeah, it's totally true. They're kind of a very unique and unconventional sounding single coil. John has told me many times that he thinks that most people would probably not like them. But for Jeff's style, you know, he's got a kind of a mid-range strong solo thing that he does. In other words, if you're into, you know, Knopfler-esque, you know, clucky stuff, or you know, the in-between positions, or whatever it is you like, it's not really about that. It's more about Jeff's thing. So they're unconventional. But yeah, he did, and that main set I know is John built, and that's the set that Jeff loves. You know, this is his main like pickup set. So that's all true when he was at Fender. Showing support for the rocking and the rolling, says Music Life with Arthur Gonzalez with a super chat. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Thanks. Ben says he's switched to tea from coffee. I get that. I really like drinking tea, actually, when I'm over in the UK. I'll do my coffee in the morning, but then later in the day I switch to tea. And it's nice because it's like you can drink tea all day, you know, and not, if you're used to drinking, you know, a coffee in the morning, maybe another one after that, and then maybe one in the afternoon, you know, tea seems like if you got any kind of problems with upset stomach or anything like that from coffee, it's definitely a good switch. Yorkshire tea, proper Yorkshire tea, I do enjoy. And I'll be doing that when I get over there. It's nice to have on stage, actually. I like making a cup of tea for the on stage situations. What's going on here with Modern Vintage with the super chat? Thank you. How was the Germino before the mods versus the SL68? Similar. I would say the Germino had a little bit stiffer filtering the way that it came, so it was big and bold and pretty clean. Kind of, you know, had a real sort of, if you liked, you know, the Malcolm Young thing, it did that really well. It sounded great. What were the differences in feel and tone? I think that's it. Parts-wise, is it a step up? No. I wouldn't say so. The SL68 is exceptional. The Germino is also really great. My Germino had mostly Sozo caps, I think. John uses different caps and stuff like that, but, you know, they're both very comparable builds. And John has a lot of respect for Germino, by the way. Because Germino builds a great amp and is very meticulous, and so is John. I think they have a lot of mutual respect. So, but I would say they're right there, neck and neck with one another, build quality wise and parts wise and stuff like that. You know, I haven't heard John say, you know, he's picky about stuff, and I haven't heard him say something like this about many people. But he says if I was going to have a Marshall built by somebody, you know, that wasn't me building it, Germino, you know, would be a. So that's a pretty strong endorsement, I think. He's got a great respect for him. D-Max says, good day, Pete. Quick FYI that I got a Sir Mini Riot from Lauzon Music and Audio, Ottawa. The pedal's great, but I want to say the owner says you're a cool dude. I really liked that store in Ottawa, so please say hi to them for me. I remember doing a clinic there. It was a good vibe, really nice. Just a good scene, really nice shop. So I can attest to that. It's a great place. I'm sure Ben knows that store well. Does anyone know what tremolo is on Pete's red signature? That's the Wilkinson that I use on pretty much everything these days with their lock saddles. So it's the one with the little Allen screw lock saddle so that you can lock the string down. I don't actually know the name of it. It's got a model part number, but I don't know the name of the bridge, like that part number offhand. So maybe somebody can tell me what that is. I should know that, shouldn't I? But I don't. Let's see. Ian got a AC30 CH head yesterday. Which one is that? Is that like a newer version that has a certain feature set? Tim says, saw you posted a while ago that you wish you still had a Rockman. Me too, sold mine a while ago. Somebody actually contacted me and said they sell them, they refurbish them and sell them when I said that. I would like to get one, actually. Pretty cool. And thank you for the super chat, Tim. Very kind of you. Sorry, I moved on from your question a little too quick there. Let's see. Amplitude's Rockman scratches my nostalgia itch pretty well. Have you tried it? I have not. I should give that a try. I'm sure it's really good. I actually used a Rockman Kemper capture in my Steve Stevens. It was a video for the Waza Dimension pedal, Boss Waza Dimension C or Dimension D. And I played Flesh for Fantasy in it, and I was like, how am I going to do this? And I remember Steve saying that he used 2 compressors and a volume pedal to do it, like one in front, one after the Rockman. There's like tons of compression on the sound. And so I just dialed up a Rockman. I found a Rockman Kemper preset. Sounded great. Worked really good. So, other ways to get there, I guess. But I'd still love to have one. There's a good question from Richard, actually, before I hit the Guitar Ninja question that I just was on. Should tubes be taken out of an amp before shipping? It's not a bad idea, I didn't this time around. I have an extra set, but it's probably not a bad idea, I will say, As long as you're careful, because, of course, every time you take a tube in and out, there's a risk of bending pins or, breaking things, But, yeah, if you want to, take I don't think it's a bad idea at all if you want to put in the extra little effort to kind of protect. It is many times, I think, physical, shaking and jarring and things on tubes that can actually, not always, but that can definitely, like they say tubes don't last as long in combos because, of course, combos have a speaker in them, and the speaker is vibrating the tubes and kind of like, so that physical, I've heard that before, that heads are easier on tubes than combo amps because of that. So that's kind of interesting when you've got like the tubes hanging down in a combo and the speakers there and kind of, just the physical, it's interesting. I'm sure it's a difficult thing to kind of gauge, but, long story short, I would say it's not a bad idea to pull the tubes if you can do that before shipping. Are there any clinics planned for 2023? Would love you to come back to In Stuff. Great store. I spoke the other day at Sir when I was out there actually about the possibility of some clinics this coming year. I'd have to develop one, so I want to come up with a good idea for a clinic. In order to do more, because I've kind of feel like I've done the one I did it in Stuff, which is like music and production for the modern guitarist, I called it, or something. So recording and production, and I feel like I've done that. So I need to come up with a new concept, but I can do that, and maybe with the help of you guys, maybe you can tell me what you'd like to see in the clinic. I'd appreciate any input you've got. And yeah, because the demand seems to be there, even with some dealers that I haven't been to before. Yeah. Do you ever feel like you stay home too long and it gets hard to go back on the road? There's always a little anxiety before you go, like when you're out of practice and that kind of thing. But then once you get out there, it's a great feeling. I get a little feeling like uh, when I get out there that like I know what I'm doing. Like when you get on stage, you're like, yeah, it's my pedal board, and all my guitars are here, and there's a PA, and it sounds good and it's like this is where I'm supposed to be, you know. It's a little like the movie First Blood with Sylvester Stallone when he's like having his like emotional kind of breakdown at the end, and he's like, over there I was in charge of $1 million equipment, over here I can't even get a job. It's a little like that. Like you're out there and you're like, yeah, there's a PA and all this gear and like I know how to do this and like let's play, you know. And I feel very at home, like in that environment. So it's a weird thing because I almost feel less at home. I feel more anxiety always when I'm at home. Partially because being a musician, and even working in this room and doing what I do, the anxiety of kind of every day you got to kind of drive your ship, you know, like, okay, I got to make a video today for this product. Okay, now this one, and then answering emails and doing all that stuff. Like being on the road is very easy because your day, although it's different every day because you're in a different city, you're generally, you know, the songs, you've rehearsed them. You know what to expect, you know, so you get a little bit of variety every day because you're in a different city every day. And that's really fun. But, and it gives you a little, it's like the best of kind of like having a different thing every day. No 2 days are the same, but there's a lot that's the same, which is your crew, your buddies that you're out with and stuff, and the routine every day. You know, 4 o'clock is sound check, pretty generally every day, whatever, you know. And so you get a little bit of it's really great. So I just actually really like touring. Not always, you know, but if it's a good situation, it can be really great. So. It can, and you know, I don't have kids and stuff, so it's like that makes it extra. I mean, that is a whole nother layer of like, you know, depending on what your family life situation is, you know, that's going to lend up. And I don't know I know a little bit from the past of what it was like if I was in a relationship with somebody that had kids and stuff, and then you get kind of close to them or whatever. Those things have happened to me. I've experienced that, and that's another layer of like, okay. You know, that you have to navigate and stuff. If you're sort of, you know, have a understanding partner or you're single or whatever, then that's a much easier road, I would say, literally road, being on the road. Anyway, that's a long ass answer, but hopefully helpful. Jonathan says he thoroughly enjoyed traveling to Malta to see Classic Rock Show last year. That's cool. That was a really fun gig. Loud and fun and hot and good times. I had a good time doing that one. Barefaced cab with Fryette PS100. Is that a brand of cabinet? Barefaced? Or do you just mean that you want to do a cab with no a grill on the front, a la Eddie Van Halen in 1978? Always cool. I mean, I kind of like grill cloth because I feel like it does affect the sound. I mean, if it's old style Marshall grill cloth, it can be real thick. And it does dampen the high end a little bit, you know. If it's kind of modern grill cloth, probably doesn't make that much difference. A lot of it is kind of thin these days, but that old, real thick basket weave stuff that Marshall used was pretty like it had a filter effect. I think, you know. So it just depends, but. Yeah, Ryan says, are you going to take us with you again in the rock show? Like a rig rundown or something? You know, I was supposed to do one last year, and I felt bad because we filmed one, and then I never put it out. But for whatever reason, all the stuff we filmed, it just felt sort of daunting. And I'll do one this year for sure and do some videos out on the road, you know. But I'll probably make them quicker and a little less like a chore, you know, because I never did the rig rundown from the last year because I had this big old, it was too much. So I need to make it simpler. That's the only way I can describe it, you know, just kind of simple one camera, quick walkthrough kind of stuff. And people seem to like those just as much anyway. You know, I think I filmed the one on my phone, like in Japan in 2018, and that did fine. You know, it seemed people liked it. So I don't know. It's just when it gets complicated and a lot of editing, and then I just get like uninterested. Just pick up your amp on UAD platform, says Kevin. Love it. Awesome. Thanks. Great cab selection, lots of great sounds. Do you ever add compression or any while tracking? Generally speaking, sometimes I'll use a compressor post cleans if it's like a distressor or maybe an LA3A or something, like a nice studio compressor on it's a slightly different sound than putting it, it's a more expensive studio sound than putting it like on a guitar compressor in front, a pedal style compressor. So occasionally I'll do that, but generally speaking, I'm just hitting a pedal compressor in front. Speaking of which, one of the things I got to get done over the next few days, and I am going to do this, there's 2 videos besides the Revolt that I want to get at least recorded, if not released. The Revolt's going to come out Monday, I think, the video, but the Valbrook Barbecue mid-boost pedals, and then I'm going to do, and then this Module 4 from Drybell. Now, this is a really, really great sounding compressor, so I got to get this done and out, which is, I think I showed it last week, but it's like an orange squeezer, but with way more control and kind of hi-fi ability, if you want. You can make it sound like an orange squeezer, but it's got a lot more control. You can get it to sound like a modern compressor too, but that's kind of what they went for with this. And Drybell, another great company that always, to me, makes pedals that they're cool because they're all analog and all that, but they're pushing the envelope all the time with the design. A little bit like Origin does. I love how they do that too, and I love how Crazy Tube Circuit seems to do it. Just really cool takes on things, So, anyways, yeah, but just, Kevin, generally speaking, it's a pedal compressor. That's what I like to do, so... Occasionally, it's generally when I listen to a clean sound, I'm like, I need to pump this up a little bit, even if I used a pedal compressor. Then sometimes I'll be like, let's add a little compression in the DAW, What else have we got here? Teammate says, hey, everybody out there in YouTube land, Guitar Nuts, thanks for the great content. Thanks, man. T-Top says, would be very interested in a non-IR PT50. Awesome. Yeah, I feel like that's the way to go, is to probably just do the amp, without the load built in and stuff. Yeah. So, just initially at least, Do you think Dave named the Pink Taco as a take on the PT? No, that was just one of his names, and then they ended up going to the PT designation, probably because some people thought it was politically incorrect and stuff to have a name like Pink Taco for an amp, even though there's a taco restaurant chain called that. It's like, I don't see the big deal really, but that's just me personally. But yeah, and then the PT thing does run into a little bit of confusion. So, but it's all good in the hood. Blake says, do you ever run a booster OD in front of the Sinvertech MGAT1? I didn't, but you could. It would probably be great with an OD1 in front and on the JTM45 or sort of plexi-ish settings. You could do something like that, or SD1. I didn't, but it's going to be similar to. I can't see why it would respond weird or anything. It's all analog, so not like you're hitting an A to D converter or something. Yeah, A simple line out with a gain volume control on the PT50 would be perfect. That's actually a nice idea to take a. It's a nice idea to take to do like a line out that's a tap off the speaker jack that's basically a with a ground lift. It's a good idea though. It doesn't even have to be compensated because so many people do speaker sim in the DAW and stuff these days. And anybody with a load box could then just plug that in, load it down, then take the line out and do IRs in the DAW or whatever. I'll take that into consideration for sure. Good suggestion. I don't really like the preamp line out. To me, is always kind of useless because it doesn't have the, the sound of the power section of the amp. But if you do it off the speaker jack, that's cool. I think. Yeah. And Jonathan, sorry, you were just asking if there's any plans for any more one-off gigs for Classic Rock Show. I don't know, actually. I can't answer that. I don't think so right now. but they have thought about touring other places besides the UK. So we'll see what happens. Touring stuff's starting to heat up a little bit, like getting a few different things, offers and things for the rest of the year. So I'm excited about this year. PRS is releasing the SE version of the David Grissom model on 10th of January. Anyone excited? That would be the one I would get if I was going to get a PRS. I mean, I love David, and he's a big influence. Great phrasing, always great tone, and really terrific, you know. So let's see what else we got here. Trying to move down through the chat relatively quickly. I got some super chats to do there. What P90 pickups would you put in a Les Paul? You know, is it a P90 Les Paul, or is it a regular Les Paul that then you need to get a humbucker size P90 for? Because then your options are a little more limited. I would probably look at, like, Sir has one, and I would probably look at that. I would look at Fralin. Probably between the two of those is what I would check. And there's nothing wrong with a good old Seymour Duncan, you know. But Sir, Fralin, Duncan, if you're looking for something that's probably, you know, a little more straight down the middle, as far as easy to find and stuff. Yeah. Bob says he has a PT15, loves it. Built-in IR is more convenient than a separate loader. Definitely. Agreed. It makes it super easy and great sounding. But it's just, it does add a layer of, you know, it's an extra, you know, $300, $400, $500 to the price of an amplifier. So we'll see. Modern Vintage says, oh, this is a good question, actually. I have a good answer for it. What's the backup plan amp rig for the UK tour? Always critical, I would say, although I am using a 2 amp rig. I may being a Bella and the SL68 for this tour. It's going to be fun. But, you know, built in with a 2 amp rig is you've got a bit of redundancy there. So you've always got a second amp. And if you had to get through the show, you know, I've got a you know, Duke of Tone on my board. If the SL68 were to crap out, I suppose I could crank up the distortion on the Duke of Tone, you know, hit it with the Klon in the front end, and I'd have a clean, crunch, dirty, you know, right there. So there's ways for me to get through a gig if I had to, using what I've got out there, you know. And as a matter of fact, I might just take I'll do this right now. I'm going to set this aside. You're making me think about it. But the Riot, you know, in case the SL68 goes down, I'll pop that on my board, and which my tech could do, you know, mid-song. And I could run that in front of the Bella, and I would have a pretty good distortion. And it's nice and small. So, but I've got the Quad Cortex sitting right there as well right now, ready to go. So I'm taking the Quad Cortex with me. I was thinking more for like a hotel room kind of thing, and it works as an audio interface too. If I need to do any, you know, just session on the road or something, I can use the Quad, and you know, for practice and stuff. But yeah, but main backup that I'm taking is actually that Amped 1 from Blackstar, which is a little 100-watt amp in a box, this big kind of thing, and it's so small. So it's got settings for clean and for dirt, for British dirt. So it's got a Fendery clean, British dirt thing, and the switchable power tube voicing options, and it's 100 watts. And I just thought, if either of these amps goes down, the Bella or the SL68, I can plug this thing in and have a sound, you know. And so I thought, I'll just throw this in my pedal board case because it's this big and it's relatively light. Put it in there. So I'm taking that. And it does sound good. They sent me one a while ago, and I just haven't gotten to do a video for it yet. But I've actually found it quite useful for doing a few different things, and it's nice, you know. Yeah. Okay. Do you have an option on decking on a Strat, like a blocked decked Strat here? I have this guy. Not a Strat exactly, but it's a decked Strat. So, for anybody that, you can probably hear it, right? Stays in tune quite well, unless you bend. If I bend a string right now, this guitar is going to go out of tune, because I've got it set up the old Eddie Van Halen way, which you do the screws a certain way. There's a whole video with Chip Ellis showing how to do it. You deck it. You adjust the screws a certain way, string it up a certain way, stretch the strings really good, and then dunk the bar, tune it up, dunk the bar. It should stay in tune, which it is right now, and I haven't even picked it up for a minute. Right? I mean, it's really in tune. But as soon as I bend, now hear how flat the G is? But now, comes back in tune, pretty in tune. So that was the Ed thing, was, and that's why he used the bar so much, I guess, because after every string band, he'd have to do a whammy bar dive. It works. I was blown away when I set up the guitar like that. It's like, still learning things about Eddie Van Halen, but really interesting. Anyway, I'm pretty far back in the chat, so maybe I should head down to the bottom and grab the super chats I've missed here. And so if I miss your question, which I'm going to, ask again at the bottom, please. We got 387 people online here. Great to have you all here. Thanks so much for watching the show. T-Top over there in the UK says, a coffee on me. Looking forward to Birmingham show in a couple weeks. It's coming up fast. Birmingham is early on. Some really cool shows actually early on in the tour this time. They'll all be fun. But yeah, some cool cities. Some of my favorite places are early in the tour. How was your first week of CRS with the new rig? Actually, I'm not there yet. So I'll be headed over next week, or this coming week, in a few days. Can I explain the proper way? Thank you guys for the super chats. Thank you, Peter. Can I explain the proper way to match amp ohms to cabinet ohms? Just the best is a direct match, like an 8 ohm amp setting to an 8 ohm cabinet, or 16 ohm to 16. If you have to do a mismatch, let's say your amp only has 4 and 8 ohm settings on the the switch or the speaker jacks, and you've got a 16 ohm cabinet, that's okay. That one-way mismatch, the cabinet is greater than the amp. So 8 ohm amp setting, 16 ohm cabinet, that's okay. If the cab is 4 ohms, that's not as good. So if it's an 8 ohm amp going into a 4 ohm cabinet, not as good. So less than ideal. So that's it. Always just try and match, basically 1-to-1. And yeah. Okay. What guitars are you bringing on tour? I'm taking a Sir Aura, which I'm really excited about. It's one of the prototypes that they had at the factory that they're kind of lending me to use for the tour, and really excited about that. It sounds great. It plays great. Just great sounding boutique Les Paul. I'm also taking my Scala Underdog. So those are the 2 Les Pauls. I got my Blue Sir 3 single coil jobby. That's going to come in handy on a few songs for sure. And I've got my signature red model, the new signature, and that will get a ton of use throughout the set, as well as the Aura. Those are going to be the 2 main guitars, the Aura and the PT signature. What else? A Van Halen guitar. And there was one other one. Oh yeah, I need another guitar for a couple songs that are tuned down. So I brought a guitar, my first signature model, and actually the very first one that I ever got, which is actually pre-signature, was kind of the precursor to the PT signature model. The one, it's the same spec and stuff, but it just doesn't have pickup rings. So I decided to take that one because I haven't played it on tour for a while, and it's cool looking and stuff. And it's just like, I need to use this guitar on tour. I feel guilty about not using it, so I'm taking it, and it's great. Aaron says, always enjoy these streams, learning Stop This Train while I listen today. Awesome, man. Thanks for being here. I appreciate it. Yeah. Mike says that he had a Rockman XPR. He ran into the front of his 74 Marshall and sounded amazing. Really? That's interesting. What's the XPR? Is that one of those rack mount things? Something like a compressor or something? Are there any other amp companies that John highly recommends? John has great respect for Dumble. He has great respect for, like I said, Germino. He's good friends with Dave Friedman. And let's see, what else do I hear John say that he really likes Collings guitars, I think. He has a Collings guitar. Taylor, I think he's friends with them and respects highly what they do and stuff. Those are the ones that come to mind, just kind of offhand, but there's plenty of others, I'm sure, that he would tell you. Yeah. And I know, like, Aiken, he's Randall Aiken, he really feels like has a great, amount of knowledge, and he'll reference him many times when he's speaking about, well, he'll say, well, Aiken says this about a certain subject or whatever, and he, speaks really highly. Yeah. BBE compressor or fuzz, Ryan's asking about. Sorry, I don't know. I'm not too familiar with their the BBE compressor or fuzz, but generally speaking, BBE did put out some cool pedals. For inexpensive prices. Is that even a phrase? Inexpensive prices. That's redundant. I guess it's not. Okay, I'm going to stop with that. Music Life with Arthur Gonzalez says there's now a Rockman guitar app. Is there? Saw RJ do a comparison. It was pretty spot on. I didn't know that. Man, there's so much stuff. I can't keep on top of it all, but you guys know how that is. T-Top says, I feel like being in a big wooden box head shell is about as safe a way of transporting tubes as anything. Well, yeah, but imagine that the only thing about being in a big wooden box is that big wooden box is prone to shock, if you know what I mean? So if tubes are out of that heavy amp and in a bunch of bubble wrap and not surrounded by a big heavy thing that, you know what I mean? I don't know how else to describe it. You're probably better off with tubes in bubble wrap in your handbag carrying them on the plane than you are, with a head and a head case. Probably. But will anything bad happen? Not necessarily. It's just, imagine your head coming, off of an airplane down a thing and going boom onto the, because that's probably what happens. So, unfortunately, in the road case. So those kinds of jarring, yeah. Is there going to be a PT30 amp coming out? Not a 30. The next one we would do is closer to, 45, 50 watts, something like that, I do believe. The PT amps all have great master volumes, so I don't think there's a lot of point in doing some mid-ground sort of one. Unless someday we do an AC30 style thing, which I would love to do, by the way, because I love AC30s. That's the one amp that I feel like the only way to do it justice is to have that stuff. Like, you can't. It's if you've got a Marshall style power section. If anything else, if you screw with anything in the AC30 formula, the speakers, the cabinet, the type of power amp, certainly what's going on in the front end, you don't have an AC30 anymore, and it doesn't do that thing. So it's like, I'd love to at some point do some take on a 30, because that's just a magic sound. And a great AC30 they're so much fun to play, and they're so guitar friendly, guitaristic, like, just, I really bond with the AC30 thing. So I'd love to do one of those sometime, and it's just a very different thing that I totally enjoy. So I was used to, like Carl Verheyen, if you guys know him, he used to use two AC30s in stereo with a Marshall in mono, and he'd have the AC30s on either side of his Marshall, and that was a really cool rig. Like, AC30s semi-gritty or just edge of breakup for your cleans and stuff, and you can hit the middle position or the 2 and the 4 position on a Strat and get an amazing clean sound, maybe with a little bit of mod delay or a little bit of, something modulating. What a great sound. And then go to the Marshall for lead in the middle. Ooh, it's cool. It's a cool rig. I'd love to do a rig like that, actually. 2 AC30s and a mono mono straight up kind of Marshall-y thing, but maybe loaded down and then with some post effects still in mono, which is what I'm doing on this tour, by the way. Basically doing a mono straight up plexi, and it's gonna be fun. What do I think about NOS tubes? I've had such bad luck with new tubes blowing up. Yeah, new tubes can be problematic. It's hard for manufacturers these days too, but they if you test them right, and if you get good ones from a good tested, vendor, you should be in good shape, but they can be problematic. But NOS is great. It's just harder and harder and harder to find every year. I really love the old NOS Siemens tubes, the Ace German EL34s, the skinny bottle ones. Those are still sort of reasonable price. So for a Marshall or something, they sound amazing. They're a little bit more on the skinny side tonally too. They don't have quite the bass of something like a 60A7 or an old Mullard or something that's a little thicker, but they're still really great sounding. And it's a cool sound anyway. Maybe you don't want that bass for your Marshall. It's an amazing sounding tube, I think, for NOS. And then for 12AX7s, kind of can't go wrong with the Bugle Boys. I just love a good tested high gain Amperex Bugle Boy. I love those in just about anything. They sound so good. Scott saying there's a new EVH interview. This fella, I never know how to say his name right, but it's Jazz, I guess, right? He was the guy that did the early interviews with Eddie Van Halen for Guitar Player, and I saw that there was he posted a link about it on the Gear page, new interview with all the audio from a 79 or 80 era interview with Eddie Van Halen. I got to listen to that too. Because supposedly there's a lot more. We've all read the interviews. If you're an Eddie fan, you've probably seen them in the magazine. But there's a lot more that got edited out that are in these interviews. So go check that out. There's a link to this interview that we're talking about here on the Gear page in the Soundhound Lounge section of the Gear page. So if you want to check out the interview, go check it out. 407 people online. I couldn't be happier to have you all here today. Thank you for joining. Fantastic. Johnny Bean's on his way to Hollywood. He's gonna make it. He's gonna be famous. No, that's cool. Are you moving? Are you on vacation? What's happening? Welcome to our town. We're gonna get some rain today, unfortunately, or fortunately, actually, we need it. Although it's all kind of coming at once. Robert says I ordered the UA Volt 276 audio interface. There is a IK Multimedia T-Rax 5 SE included. Do I need more plugins to start? No. I want to start my first recording ever. No. Enjoy what it comes with. Just get everything installed. I will suggest setting aside some time before you record your first magnum opus to just sort of learn it. Don't go, okay, I'm going to sit down and record my song now. And then you're like, how do I arm a track? And then you get frustrated 20 minutes later and you're like, I don't feel like doing this anymore. That can be the thing. If you sit down with a slightly different intention, which is I'm just going to learn this gear for a minute and just going to make some noise and I don't need to start recording my song right away. I might spend a day or two just getting around this stuff and trying the plugins and messing around. And then in a few days, you can be like, okay, I'm going to start recording now. I get it. I know how to basically do this. That's my suggestion. It can make a big difference in your sort of success with a new DAW, any new technology really that has to do with recording or making music. Just sort of setting aside the time to learn your way around the stuff before you get creative. James, very nice comment. I want you to know that you're a very great guitarist. I hope to see you make it to the top in your performances. Thanks, man. I appreciate that. I'm still learning. Still working on it. Any studio monitor recommendations for good guitar studio monitoring? I like Adams. I use the little A7Xs, and I also have some Barefoot monitors. So if you want to see what I use, I'll show you this side of my desk because you don't often see this in my videos. But, there's the Atom up on the stand and the Barefoot down below, which are more midfields. Unfortunately, kind of because of the configuration of my desk and my stands and stuff, you'll notice the Barefoots are lower than the Atoms. So I often feel like I need to change my listening position when I'm switching from monitors because they just don't, the Atoms are higher. So I'm often... Luckily, I have a chair that I can raise or lower. So, I'm not in the optimum position for the Atoms when I'm listening to the Barefoots, I feel like. So, Yeah, but the Atom A7X, or for a kind of a reasonably priced monitor, or even the T5s, I think they're called, are the ones I have at home. They're the 5-inch cheaper ones. There's a big difference in price. I mean, like $1,000 between those and the A7Xs. So, but they sound very similar. So if you want to get a set that's kind of sub $700, let's say, I don't know how much they are. I think they might be $500-$600 for the two of the T5s. Great sounding for a reasonable price, I think. I also like Yamahas, the kind of lower priced, what Yamaha does in the, $299, $399, $499 kind of range. Pretty nice, I think. So those are some recommendations. And you just kind of want to listen. I mean, I can highly recommend the Atoms if you don't have a chance to listen. You just want to order from Sweetwater or something. I think there's there's just a thing going on in the top end that's really accurate, and they're a little more upper mid forward and stuff. But I feel like I'm hearing what the hell's going on with the guitar, especially with them. They have a unique tweeter design, the ribbon tweeter. It's a little unconventional, but they just sound much more. Some monitors sound too relaxed in the upper, like to me, like. I won't name names, but there's just some that seem a little too. Low mid or low end forward without a lot of clarity in the top end. I cannot tell. When I listen to that, I can't tell what the hell's going on with guitars. I'd rather use NS10s, Yamahas. Something that's really got, the top end. And with NS10s and with the Atoms, you kind of need to make the guitar aggressive. And it should be just kind of loud and, really present. And if you make the guitar kind of mellow, on the Atoms, then on a more mellow listening system, the guitar will seem really muted. Does that make sense? So, I don't know how to describe it. It would seem almost counterintuitive. Like on NS10s, but mixing on an NS10, the old Yamaha studio standards, you kind of had to make the bass sort of just audible. Like, okay, I can kind of hear what's going on with the bass, but they don't really have any real low end. So it's like, you're more hearing that. There's not a hell of a lot going on them. I feel like below 400 hertz or something. So if the bass is just sort of audible, and then the guitars and the snare drum are just ripping your head off, that was right on an NS10. But I got used to that, I guess, maybe early in, that just, I knew how to work with that. And now anything that seems relaxed in the top end or whatever, I don't know how to reference it. It just doesn't work for me. So, it's a weird feeling when you're trying to mix and you're like, I don't know what's going on. I don't like that feeling, So, when you drive a car and it's got no feedback through the wheel, and maybe the lines. I felt like this driving a Toyota Prius. I can't see out of them. The windshield is so raked, and then out of the back I can't see. And then with the old school regenerative braking they had before companies kind of got that more together, and they just felt like I can't see out of this thing. I can't tell what's going on. That's the way I feel like mixing on some monitors. It's not a good feeling. Have you started to ship your new signature model yet? I believe it's just happening right. I'm not doing it, but those guys are working on them and starting to ship them, I believe. Yeah. So I was out at the Surf Factory actually last week, and they've made some really amazing changes out there. If anybody's ever been there for a tour or anything, or seen it, maybe for one of their NAMM events, it looks quite different out there now. So, I'm pretty far back in the chat, aren't I? Holy, because you guys are just talking about my First Blood Stallone impression, which was like a half an hour ago or more. So I better go down to the bottom of the chat, and I've probably missed super chats and all kinds of stuff. So let's do that. Okay, let's see. Do you have an ETA update for that instructional video you made up in Vancouver? It got pushed back a little bit. So I hear it's first couple months now of 2023 was what it was supposed to be, spring. So yeah, I can hit them up and ask them, but it was originally supposed to be around October or November, and then I think they were just having some issues getting it edited and stuff. But so it should be any day now, I think. But I'm sorry, I don't know more than that. They told me, kind of like March, February, something like that. So it's soon. Soon. Do I think an analog drive-through is necessary with a Fractal FM3? It depends on the use. I mean, if it'd be counterintuitive if you're using the FM3 as your main source of tone, because of course you got to convert to digital to use is the FM3, it's just the modeler that's the little guy, right? Let me see here. So that I'm answering your question. Okay, so yeah, it's the one I have here. That's the one I did the video for and stuff, and it's a simple amp modeler effects processor. Are you talking about using it for effects only? If you're the only way to use it with an analog dry-through, like using something like the wetter box or something or a parallelizer, would be if you mix the effects 100% wet, which you could do because you've got your multiple paths within something like a fractal, like an FM3 or something. So you could have parallel, say, delay and pitch or reverb in different paths and do that kind of stuff with it. But it's not, I think it's cool to do wet, dry, wet and have analog dry through, but it just requires a certain kind of, I've been in this world a little bit recently, like with something that is getting worked on, and the whole wet, dry, wet thing, the whole purpose of an analog dry through or wet, dry, wet, it was really like to keep that analog path pure. So that center dry signal with nothing happening other than raw guitar analog tone, right? That was the whole point of wet, dry, wet. A lot of players feel like that feels better. It's immediate. There's no A to D conversion going on. There's nothing, in the way. For things like feedback, I know players like Lano and Scott Henderson, they liked having a wet amp and a dry amp, and that was the reason, was to get that interaction between the guitar pickups and the cabinet, as I understand it. A lot of players, they really like that, and I liked it too when I was doing it. But you do get into, it makes your rig fairly complex when you got to do that. So just tell us maybe what your rig is and how you're planning on using the FM3, and then I'll tell you if it makes sense or not, to me, in my opinion. I feel as though I'm experiencing tone loss, says Todd Roy. I ordered a buffer pedal. Where should I put it in my chain? My suggestion is this, Todd, that you start with just your guitar into the amp, right? And then start adding things. So start adding pedals or effects one at a time. And maybe even work backwards. So like if you run a delay pedal or a reverb at the end of your chain, plug that in and then listen to it. And then add the next pedal, plug your guitar in, listen to it, and see where you think you're starting to get. Because sometimes it can be like a buffer. For 98% of the time, the buffer is going to help. But sometimes it can even be just, it won't help. Because like, let's say you've got a pedal that changes the impedance coming out of the output of the pedal, but the buffer is before that, then the buffer is only going to help up to a certain point, and then that pedal's messing with your sound after that. Or occasionally you can have a bad cable that's like, and then the buffer doesn't really help either. So you just kind of want to eliminate things. Like I found once that even a buffer wasn't working for me because there was a long 20-foot cable I was using that was messing up the sound for whatever reason. I don't know why, and I eliminated that cable and got a different one, and it helps. So anyways, just start with your guitar plugged into the amp, make sure that sounds good, then start adding pedals one at a time. And then when you get to the place where you're like, oh, I think I'm losing tone now, maybe at that point, add the buffer and see if it fixes what you're hearing. See if it then, putting the buffer in front of the thing that you added that seems to be degrading the sound. See if that helps. Every little step of the way, though, with cable, of course, every foot of cable adds capacitance to your sound, depending on the type of cable you're using, and then depending on certain pedals. Like everything that you're doing along the way, if your signal is high impedance, adds capacitance, you're losing high end, you're lowering that resonant peak that I talked about in the cable video I made a while ago, and changing your sound. So the buffer will just kind of eliminate that. If you like the sound of a certain length of cable, though, John Suhr always says, find the cable that you like, be it 18 feet, 20 feet, 22 feet, whatever it is, and you plug that straight in the amp, and you're like, if you use a 10-foot cable, you might be like, that sounds a little bright. And then you use the 20-foot, you might be like, that sounds really good to me with this cable. Okay, so that's the point now. At that point, with that cable, 20 feet, now you kind of want to add the buffer right there, because you'll still get the sound of that cable before the buffer. It's what comes after that you're now decoupling and kind of like making low impedance, and you now can pass the signal all the way through to the amp and keep the sound really pure. So hopefully that makes sense. A couple different ways to go at it there, but I guess the lesson is work backwards, add things one at a time, try and find the culprit where you feel like you're losing tone. Maybe it's a cable, patch cable. Maybe it's a certain pedal, and you can try the buffer there. And then also equally as important, find the cable length you like. Maybe that's then after that where you want to put the buffer. Hope that's helpful. Would love to see a full video of your HSS guitar. Yeah, I mean, I sort of did the one, but yeah, I could. I mean, I did the initial release video. I feel like it's a fairly simple guitar, but I could kind of run through every single sound and stuff and do something a little bit more detailed. Maybe when we, I think that's a really good idea. Once we get their shipping and there's some more built that have the different color options and stuff, that maybe I could run out to Sir and show all of that. If they could get if there's a ocean turquoise and the charcoal metallic one that we're doing and stuff, there's a couple different cool colors that are coming, and then do a video with all of them and stuff. That's a good idea. I'm gonna actually talk to Justin about that out at Sir, and yeah. In your Gemino, does it have the post-phase inverter master or other master? I like, that's a super chat there from Modern Vintage. Thank you. I like the post-phase inverter master. I have it in my SL68. The Germino did have it, and it doesn't now because the Germino has changed so much because I've got the Jose mods in it. So now I've got a JCM 800 style master in it because it's got a gain mod in the front end. So initially, it still had the post-phase inverter master in it on the back end. That's a lot of masters, though. It has both the Jose masters in it, the pre-EQ and the post-EQ, and I can switch between them. And then it also had the post-phase inverter master on the back. It's like 3 different master circuits. It's like, Dave, when he did the mods, was like, I'm just going to pull this out. And I get why, because you don't really need, I mean, unless you're using it as a plexi, you don't really need that post-phase inverter master. You know, and I'm not really using it as a plexi that much, even though I wanted to have the option to do that. It's mainly for the Jose mods. That's what that amp was for, you know. So my old 50, my Marshall that's sitting up there, you know, I've got that one, 72 JMP. It's straight up. There's no mods or anything. I've got the SL68. It's got a post-phase inverter master, and it's a, you know, Van Halen plexi other than that. And then the Gemino is my modded plexi. So it's like they've all got their purpose, I guess, sort of. Yeah. Adam says, so there won't be a reactive load in the PT50. Interesting. Well, I'm not saying that there won't be. I'm just saying that initially we've talked about releasing the straight up amp first without it. And then maybe down the road we add a reactive load, you know, do it. See, last time we put out the PT15 and we did the reactive load and the IRs first, which I think was great because it's a big selling point, especially on a 15 watt, kind of more like that style lower watt head. It's easier to do a reactive load on a 15 watt head. On a 50 watt head, you need to up the, you know, it's a little more, it's just a little more parts and stuff in to do it the way Sir does it, especially in a 50 watt. So we talked about just doing a straight up 3-channel amp that almost is like a brand new, much more updated, different everything PT100, but in a 50 watt, you know, and then we can do a 100 watt that would be like that. So it's like a little more akin to the PT100 than it is to the PT15 at that point. You know what I mean? So, but I want to do it with the intention of potentially, you know, adding, and it's a high probability of adding a load and IRs to it and maybe coming out with that as a deluxe version, you know. We were just talking about initially, this is all up in the air still, by the way. So it's not like, so there won't be, you know. I don't want to put it that way, Adam. I just want to say it's like we're just discussing it. And I'm kind of okay with the idea of just doing the amp first without a load or that kind of stuff built in. So yeah. Okay, I'm so far back here and I've missed super chats and stuff, so I'm gonna keep moving here quicker. Mac versus PC, says Jeff. I'm a Mac guy, but people love PCs, so you know, more power to them. FX pedal side input and output versus top input and output. Oh, it's a good question. If you put them on the top, they just have to be spaced, you know, I think. Sometimes companies put them too close together. This is fine on this pedal. Here's one with top mount jacks, right? This dry bell. That's totally cool, I think. But when they get too close, then it can limit your choices as far as using the little, angle jacks and stuff like that on pedal boards. And I'm fine with them on the side because these days you've got the super flat jacks and stuff. So I don't think it really matters. I mean, I'm totally cool with this design. You can space pedals a little closer then, because this pedal's a little wider than some. So I know why they did it on this. That makes sense. But like on a Phase 90 or something, this pedal that size, they're fine on the side. Just don't put them too close together on the top. That's the only thing. Yeah. James says he's got a picture of Hendrix in his studio as well. Cool. Jimmy's always watching. Is there a new set list for a classic rock show? Yes, it's very different and really fun. Really fun. We're doing some fun songs this year. I'm actually really looking forward to it. Super musical. Going to be a blast to play the music. I was thinking about classic rock show yesterday because one of my sort of mantra for gigs is there's three things with any touring gig, right? There's the music, the hang, and the money. And you can have any two of those, and it can be like, yeah, this is a good gig. If you've got all three, it's great. If the money's great, the music's great, and the people are great, that's a dream gig. If you've got, great music and the money's good, if the folks are jerks, well, at least the time on stage will be fun. Your bank account reflects it, right? If the money kind of sucks, but it's a great hang and the music's awesome, that's pretty fun too. And if you can swing it money-wise, then it's cool. But if you've only got one of those three things, right, then it's going to suck. If the money's great, but you hate the people and the music sucks, you're not going to be happy. You're just going to be like, get me out of here, even though I'm making good money. So music, hang, money. With classic rock show, I mean, I'm not going to talk about the money, but it's good for me. I'm happy, and the people are unbelievable. They're really, really fun. Like super fun group of people. Just a really, really nice hang all the way through the group. No bad eggs, and the music is like epic. So what a great gig, Actually, it's super fun. I was just being appreciative about it the other day in my own mind and thinking about it. The songs. I mean, there's always a couple where I'm like, okay, this isn't really my thing. I won't name names, but there's always that, and I'm sure everybody in the band feels that way, right? Where it's like you're sort of making a concession or whatever. But it's not a big concession because they're all like epic rock songs. So it's like, even if it was like, I never really liked this one, it's still like, well, it's a really good song. It was a big hit. So it's just really fun music. So it's a good hang. Rick says, or RCK, not Rick. See how my mind abbreviated that? RCK says, your HH turned me on to Sir guitars, but I needed HSS configuration. Only grabbed 2 Sir HSS. Love and really look forward to your HSS SIG. Thank you, sir. I appreciate that. I do. It's coming soon. They're building as fast as they can out there. Rover's talking about the Black Star I'm using as a backup. It's a little solid state. I believe it's probably Class D power amp. And but it's got voicing for EL34s or 606, where they've kind of modeled it in there or something. It's probably analog, but maybe it's not. Maybe it's digital. I don't know how they're doing that. Anyways, it just works really well. It's a nice little. It's going to work as a fantastic backup. Just moving through the chat as fast as I can here. Rocking a PT15 says Fat Mary 2787. What pedal would you recommend to boost for singing solo tones on channel 3? I use a Klon style, so I'm using the Unobtainium from Crazy Tube Circuits. I used the Archer for many years. That's great too. You could use a Tumnus and get close to what I'm doing. That just makes single notes fat and huge and sing and sustain forever. So I would recommend any of those. If you want a little bit more, a modern, well, not modern. I'll say if you want like a bit more 80s hard rock, you could go SD1, an SD1 Waza. And a Tube Screamer type will work good too. Or try a Sir, amazing singing solo sound is a Sir mid boost, like the Coco Boost, either the full size one or the smaller one. Amazing sounding. I love that pedal. Really, really great. Brad Miller there with the super chat. Thank you, sir. Appreciate that. Would there be extra voicing switches on a PT50? Yes. Some really cool stuff. It might be cool if a low mid voicing was an option. I have non-IR PT15 going with just the amp for the 50 would be cool. Voicing for me, the biggest thing that I wanted to achieve, to be honest, is like a truer sort of plexi thing. So a little more like the lower gain side of, just plexi, think plexi, and all that entails, right? And so that's kind of where I want to get on the a PT50, is those elusive kind of mid gain, voicings, all the way to the high gain Marshall thing. So that's kind of what I'm thinking. Low mid, when I think of low mid, I think a bit more Bogner kind of voicings and stuff. And that's not really my trip, but I can talk to John about that and be like, is there a way we could add maybe it's like a mid shift or something. I don't know. But I'm not really worried about that as much, just to be honest, just for where I'm coming from. I'm such a Marshall guy, that all flavors of Marshall. So for my signature thing, can't please everybody all the time, that's for sure, but you're taking all Sir guitars and amps. Hope you're packing a Sir T. Actually, I'm not. It's a lot of Sir guitars and amps, but I've also got my Scala out there, and I've also got EVH Frankie, and are those the two? I might be forgetting something else, but other than that, it could be all Sir, I guess. Isn't there one other? I don't remember. It made sense to me at the time when I put the guitars in the cases and shipped them, so we'll see. Okay. I hear lots of good things about Collings, says Nathan. Your bud, Greg Saran from Lionel Richie's band, loves his Collings. Greg Saran done Jewel Tour and Milen Farmer Tour with that man. Known him for many years. Over 20 years I've known Greg Saran. Yeah, they're good. Collings are great guitars. Yeah. Let's see. Are you planning on doing any more acoustic guitar videos, recording, tracking, etc.? Enjoy your one you did with SSL UAD plugin a while back. Thanks. Yeah, that video did really well. I don't have anything on the books right now, but I'm sure something will come up acoustic-wise. There's Peter. He says, thanks for all you do for our community. Have you ever considered putting together a rack rig with a 3+ SE in the works? I've had rack rigs. I mean, I did a tour with the old Randall preamp and the Egnator as well, with power amps and all that. When I first moved to LA, I had a studio preamp and a Mesa Boogie 295 that I shipped down here in a giant rack. Imagine what that cost my parents to send me when I was 19. Why did I do that? I could have just sold them and bought stuff in LA, but yeah, crazy. Anyways, I've done the rack thing over the years, but right now I'm such a head cabinet guy. I don't mind rack stuff. I do think there's something to having the whole thing in the one box. I don't know what that is, but like if you do Soldano preamp and a power amp, it never quite, like, people don't talk about that like they talk about the SLO. Or, a Marshall Jam P1 plus a 9200 power amp or whatever. People don't talk about that like they talk about the Plexi, It's like there was something that just, like, about the everything in one box thing where it's all working as one unit. When you separate them, it's never quite the same thing. So the rack thing, although it just, I don't know. I'm not a hater, though. I like preamps and stuff. 40-foot Echo Tour would be the last time I used a full-on nothing but rack preamp and power amp. So I used the Egnator or Randall. Back then it was the Randall, which was Egnator designed. The 4 modules, and an RT250 50-watt side power amp in a 12-space rack with some effects and a drawer and stuff. That was 20 years ago. Yeah. You guys are talking a little bit of AC30s and AC20s. Rob says AC30 is so heavy. Not bad, though, compared to a twin. But yeah, they're pretty hefty. No doubt about it. I'm so far back in the chat. Wow. How do I talk faster? I can't. Brad Miller says, hi, Pete. And super chat there. Greetings from Sydney. Great to have you here. Have you heard the new Striper album, The Final Battle? Killer vocals and full of solos by Oz. I knew Oz in 90. I remember him coming to MI and doing some clinics, and he was really nice to me. So I've got a great memory of that cat. I haven't heard it, and I know Michael's a terrific singer as well. So, but yeah, I remember Oz from way, way back. Like, that's 30-something years ago, man. That's crazy. It's great to hear that they're still working and doing stuff, and that's awesome. Sessions with Jeff is saying, can you remind me of, if you're reading this, it's 12:38. Yeah, I'm about a half an hour back in the chat. Thanks, John. Appreciate that. Or even, yeah, about half an hour. Sessions with Jeff says, could you please remind me that plugin you use on your master bus that you've mentioned? Probably the Greg Wells Mix-Centric from Greg Wells. And Waves. $50, usually, is what it goes for. It's awesome. Yeah. Okay, let's see here. This fella says he's been moving around to LA for a while, mostly between West Hollywood, Silver Lake, and Echo Park. Where should I move next? Depends what you like, man. I mean, I love Pasadena, but it's a little more chill. It's a little more like you're in a different city and it's a small town, but you're still only 10 to 15 minutes from Silver Lake, literally driving. It's so close. So I really enjoy living out there. Atwater is nice, then you're a little bit further east. I love kind of Highland Park area. So, there's both the cold kind of, if you like to go out and eat and go to the bars and stuff like that, there's the whole sort of York, where the York pub is, and is that club called the Hi-Hat? Used to be called the Hi-Hat. Is it called something different now? Anyways, a bunch of stuff along that stretch on York. And then there's also Figueroa with the old Highland Park Bowl, which is the most amazing bowling alley ever. It's an old 1915 bowling alley that's completely restored with the old alleys and everything. It's really amazing. There's 3 bars in there and 4 bars. It's really cool. And the Gold Line, which I love. It's a great record bar, Tokyo-style record bar. It plays mostly soul and R&B and sometimes rock and stuff, and just great sounding in there, man, with like old, Macintosh system, and it's just thousands of records behind the bar, and always great DJs in there playing. The deal is you have to play the records that are there, so you select from the records that are there, but there's got to be like 15,000 or something in there. Amazing. And great cocktails, and everybody in there is super cool and stuff. So it's a great hang. The Gold Line in Highland Park. So check out that scene, because I really like Highland Park. It's nice. And then you're super close to Pasadena, South Pasadena anyway. So, but yeah, I'm kind of East Sider these days, I guess. I mean, full on. Matt says here in that jazz interview, Ed says he lost all his old Marshalls in Japan. Yeah, I believe there was a shipping thing coming back on the way back from Japan, and was playing Laney temporarily after the first album came out. How does that match the history of the original one? I heard that, and then he got the amp. They found the shipment or whatever, and he got his amp back. So, yeah. Let's see. Another super chat up there I got to grab. I will do that. What else we got here? Oh, you guys are talking about studio monitors. So, yeah. I'm a half an hour back in the chat. Experimenting with different drives, says Jim. Pushing the front end of Marshall-style amp for a steel string Singer pedal by Vertex Killer for doing this. Hope you're doing well. That's awesome. That all sounds cool. What 500 series and other outboard gear do you have? So I've got a Maris mic pre that has the effect loop on it, so you can patch pedal level effects in on a mic signal. It's called the 440, I believe. I've got a DBX 560 mic pre. That's what I'm speaking through right now. I use it for this SM7. I've got a Maris Mercury reverb that I don't really use because it's mono and it's in a rack, but it's awesome sounding. I mean, it's in the 500 series rack. I wish maybe they make a plug-in version of it, because I would use that more. But it's a cool reverb nonetheless. I have a DBX. What's the number? A 560A compressor that I still use sometimes. Like when I'm recording bass, I'll patch that in. I've got a Warm Audio API style preamp in there, and that's it for now. Yeah. Let's see here. Anza says with a super chat, "What's up over in the UK? Been gigging TAD Red Bass DL TAD, right? Tube amp doctor. Red Bass EL34 for a few months. They sound great. Was just wondering how the ones you installed are holding up. Really good. They're in my old Marshall up there, and I haven't actually used it a lot recently. So, but they seem great. The amp sounds really good, and I haven't been beating them up though. So you've probably been playing yours more. So it's good to hear that they've been holding up. Man, I pulled something like on this side or slept funny on my right side. My shoulders, like every morning when I get up, when you get up and you're like, oh, it's been like that for 3 days, just killing me. 423 people online listening to me complain about my old age ailments. Great to have you all here. Love you all. What about using a sub with NS10? So that's the old Yamaha studio monitors, NS10s that I was mentioning don't have a hell of a lot of low end. Yeah, a sub with NS10s would probably be a good thing. I don't find it's that necessary with like my Adams and a more sort of modern ported, whatever, 7-inch driver monitor. For doing rock, I'm cool with no sub. But I think a sub could be a good thing for something like an NS10. Yeah. Have you ever tried the CLA NS10 clone? I have not. I'm sure they're probably pretty cool. He's a picky guy. And, I have to ask him what he thinks. But, old school, grew up using those and mixing on them and making epic hits and all that stuff. He knows his stuff. Yeah. T-Top says he uses A7s as well with a pair of Avantone mix cubes. That's cool for like mixing vocals and stuff and getting that more like a TV or smaller speaker sound. A lot of mixers used to use little Auratone monitors, these little squares, and they're really nice. I learned early on, way back in the 90s or whatever, that it was cool to mix vocals on those, kind of at a very low level. And Avantone are similar to Auratones, I think. I know Bob Clearmountain uses these little Apple speakers that you can't get anymore, but they made them in the 80s and 90s for, they were like computer speakers, and they're kind of like a rectangle tower thing. He liked those for a similar thing. Small speaker reference kind of stuff. Yeah. Is Sir growing as a company, says Stealth Parrot? Kind of every year. It's kind of amazing. It sort of like just happens, I think they do really well. Sir's in a really unique place, I think, in the guitar market, where they're not a big company like a Fender or Gibson, but they're not a small company either, It's an interesting place that they exist, and I largely attribute it to John and top down. They're just widely respected. Have you guys seen their new configurator? By the way, you should check it out. On their website, you can go and build guitars basically, and get a digital representation of approximation of what your guitar is going to look like. So you can change finishes, headstocks, because they've got a couple different headstock shapes, everything, colors of the logo, the dots, different bridges of chorus, different colored pickups, and you can configure your own guitar in any way you want, get a good idea what it's actually going to look like. So it's pretty awesome. You could lose some time there and probably go down a rabbit hole. So you guys are asking me about factory tours. I don't know how often they do that, and I don't think it's like a policy, but if you're a good customer or you're in town and that kind of thing, they do a tour once in a while, I think, for folks but I don't want to put it out there that they do factory tours on a regular basis. I know though that if you're picking up a guitar that's been repaired, or if they're sometimes they'll do a walkthrough and show people what's up. But I'm gonna get in trouble if I suggest that that's a thing that they do on a regular basis, because I know they're slammed all the time just trying to get stuff done out there. Jeff Rupert says, ISO Acoustics makes stands that I use under my A7X monitors, or A77X. Those are the big guys, the duals, right? They're about the right height to boost your barefoots to the height of your Adams. You only need a few inches. Yeah, I could do that, I guess, get some bigger... I'd love those A77Xs, by the way, the bigger one. Yeah. Do cheaper monitors like the M Audio BX5A or Alesis Elevate 5 sound good with IRs? I don't know, man. I haven't tried them, so I'd have to literally, you know, sometimes, you know, I'll go in a Guitar Center or something that has one of those monitor rooms, and I'll listen to the different, you know, if they've got something I know reference-wise, I can pull it up and I'll just listen to different speakers. But the whole thing is, and you'll find this with studio engineers many times, just like guitar speakers almost. Once you find what you like, you kind of don't deviate that much. That's what I find. So I'm not really even that interested in listening to other stuff, because when you get used to a certain speaker, it becomes like a tool that you're very comfortable working on. And then you don't go, let's see if there's something else better, like that often, you know, because it's like you just know how to make that work. And that becomes almost like your instrument, almost like having a guitar you love and you know your way around it. With studio monitors, it's like, well, I've done a bunch of mixes that seem to work using this monitor for years or whatever, and you just get into that sound. Then when you change that, it can have a real, like I say, like the effect can be like, I don't know what's happening now. Like, I'm not sure how much high end I should add to this sound because I'm not on a speaker I'm comfortable with, you know? And that's a weird place to be, because all of a sudden everything you knew goes out the window and you're feeling like, I'm not comfortable now, and I don't feel confident. That's what it is. Like, you're not confident. You lose your confidence in your ability to know what to do, how much, you know, the balance of everything. You know, because many times, think of it like, you know, if it sounds balanced to you and that's your rep, like, okay, I know what balance is on this speaker, and then you totally throw that out of whack. You know, I've tried some monitors where I'm like, man, that is a dark sounding monitor. I can't, there's no way I could mix guitar on it because it sounds so muted in the top end and relaxed that I would be adding guitar, like, you know, and adding top end to try and get what my brain is accustomed to, the way I'm accustomed to mixing, right? And then it's going to come off as being ripping your head off on any other normal system, you know, like the guitars go, wow, it's a harsh ass mix, you know, and you don't want it that. So that's why, you know, I don't really look that much. I mean, once I found the Adams and I decided I really liked them, which was 2006, that I moved to those. That's a long time ago now, and I've been using them ever since. The original A7s, and now I sold those and got a pair of A7Xs. And the T5s at home, which sound really similar to me and really good. It's like, yep. When I tried the T5s in the store, I was like, oh yeah, these, I know exactly what's going on these. There was no question. It was just very similar sounding top end. It was like, I can move to these and work on these and be fine. A couple speakers that I tried, other ones that I like I say, in the lower end, because I knew another guy that had a studio, and I listened to them there. The modern Yamaha stuff for less expensive kind of speakers are really quite nice, I think. And focals. I quite like focals because I had to do some mixing on some once, and I was like, yeah, I feel comfortable on these. I could tell that there wasn't a vast difference between what I was hearing on those and Adams, and I thought, and I did some work on them, and it translated, and I was like, okay, I'm good on these. Yeah. Scooby Stapp says, so longer cables take out the highs. Yes, the longer the cable, no matter the brand, to different varying amounts, though. Your longer cable with a high impedance signal is going to mute your top end. And there's a whole video I did with Cordial on this. If you search for my name and then cables and demo and Cordial, Cordial. Also, there's a link in the video description, I think, to Cordial that you can check out, because I quite like their cables. They're a German cable company, and I've been using some of their cables, and they make really nice low capacitance cables, and they're not crazy money. You know, a lot of like high-end guitar cables can be really expensive. Cordials are pretty competitively priced. But anyway, so I did a video kind of in conjunction with them where I showed a couple of their top-end cables compared to some other stuff on the market, and you'll hear right away when you watch that video, even over YouTube, the effect of a lot of capacitance, which is, you know, high-end loss, essentially, layman's terms, on your signal. And also the effect of the resonant peak, because right before that high end rolls off, you get a little resonant peak in the mids, upper mids, or highs, depending on where that resonant peak is and the length of cable you're using. And as that resonant peak kind of moves down, some people like a little capacitance because that resonant peak sounds like more gain on a guitar signal. It can actually push the if you push that resonant peak down into, the 2K range or 2.5K, like where there's a lot of high-end active on guitar amps. If it's up above 5K, now the speaker's rolling off, right? And you're not getting that bump. But if it's down below that, all of a sudden you get this rise, and it can kind of sound like upper mid aggressiveness in your signal. And it's kind of fascinating, actually. A certain cable length, like 20 feet of that Belden cable that I was saying that, Dave Friedman likes in the video. You'll hear it in the video of the Belden has a certain slightly muted top end, but a bit more aggressive upper mids than the other cables because of where that peak is, That stuff kind of scares me, having said all this, because I don't want to rely on a cable necessarily to get my sound. So I'd almost rather have a low capacitance buffered signal and then get my sound out of my pedals, my amp and everything, and not be worrying about needing a certain cable and a certain length of cable to give me the sound I want. It's one more factor where it's like, now it's like having a certain pickup or having a certain pedal, or you know what I mean? But it's a sound, and some people like it. The slightly more muted top end and that resonant peak that can happen with certain guitar cables. So your mileage may vary. Check out the video I made. It's pretty apparent in the video, I think, especially on the Belden cable. It is a nice sound. It's a good sound, It's a great rock and roll cable, that Belden, And it's not expensive. It's just standard kind of good high quality cable that happens to have a little more capacitance than some others, and maybe it's pleasing to some people at a 20-foot length. Todd Roy says, that is ironic. What are you guys? Oh, you guys are talking about buffers. Let's see. That is ironic because last night I found an article John Sir did a while ago on buffers, and I learned a lot. Yeah, John's got that perspective of like kind of what I just said, actually. Find the cable that you like and then add the buffer right after that. And John's a sensible guy, and obviously he's very logical, and that made a lot of sense to me, Capacitance, says Rover. Don't you mean impedance? No. So capacitance is something that develops if you're using a standard high impedance signal, right, coming out of a guitar, passive pickups, and you add a certain amount of cable to your sound. Capacitance is the effect of a little bit of high end loss that happens with every foot of cable when you're using a high impedance guitar signal. So hopefully that makes sense. Let's say you've got EMGs in your guitar. You're buffered right out of the guitar. The signal is low impedance coming out of the guitar at that point. And now your guitar will actually drive, in theory, 80 feet of cable without a change in tone, right? One of the advantages, if you see it as an advantage to EMGs or any active pickup, is that it drives long cable lengths, I've talked a lot about this over kind of the last few years, but because I've thought a lot about it. But one of the things about EMGs was that could be seen as an advantage, like when they first came out back in the day. I mean, I talked to Lukather about this, where I was like noise and, and stuff with, guitar rigs back in the day. And he was like, yeah, that's the reason why we started using EMGs, because they were like that consistency and the elimination of kind of what I'm talking about, a lot of these factors of capacitance, as well as sometimes noise and things, because EMGs tended to be quieter, than many passive pickups. And so one of the things people thought about them, though, was the sound was kind of, we used to hear cold, oh, it's kind of cold sounding, those pickups, or they don't quite have the character of a passive pickup. All that character and sort of the cold comments and stuff like that, I think that was a result of absolutely no capacitance in the signal, and them being the biggest factor was buffered straight out of the guitar, no high impedance, nothing going on, right? And none of that kind of sound that you get out of a high impedance passive pickup guitar signal, just straight buffered coming right out of the guitar. So it's kind of interesting. You also didn't get any interaction with and sometimes a downright heinous bad sound if you were using something like a fuzz face or a tone bender or certain univibe type pedals, or certain pedals that relied on a passive high impedance guitar signal. I know this stuff gets complicated, but it's like basically there's certain pedals out there that don't want to see basically a low impedance signal, i.e. they won't work well with EMGs or certain Fishman Fluence or different pickups like that. An old fuzz face won't sound good with pickups like that, pretty much, because the pedal itself forms a circuit with the high impedance guitar pickups and electronics that's part of the sound. And it's a difficult thing to get your head around. I mean, I remember when I built my first rig, pedal board rig for Chris Cornell, and I put an experience pedal on the pedal board. I was using a G system from TC to switch effects and do effects, and also I had my pedals in the loops. Well, that experience pedal, which is kind of a vintage Hendrixy fuzz that had an octave fuzz and fuzz face style circuit in it and stuff, it didn't sound good at all in that rig. And I was like, why does it sound so shitty like in this rig? And the big part of it was that I didn't understand at the time was because my rig was buffered at that point. It was low impedance. And if I was using a wireless or, any of that stuff was buffering the signal, and that experience pedal wasn't working right with the rig anymore. It just didn't sound good. So, yeah. So there you go. Okay, what else we got here? Let's see. Is the buffer from the Friedman power supply on your tour board on or off? I usually leave it on. There's good questions about buffers and impedance and stuff this week. I usually leave it on, but the reality is if I'm using a wireless, it makes no difference because my signal is always low impedance coming out of the guitar once again. Same problem, right? But if you use a wireless, if you use a wireless and your sound's buffered coming right out of the guitar, you've essentially kind of got the same sound that you would have with EMGs in many ways. Like you're not getting any of that capacitance and stuff out of a cable. And I think this is the thing with people. I was kind of got off on a tangent there, but back in the day, in the 70s and the 80s, before wireless became like really common, and modern wireless systems and stuff, when most people were still just using cables and stuff, the introduction of an EMG or active pickup to their sound was very different, because of this low impedance stuff that we're talking about, the sound being buffered right out of the guitar. Well, nowadays, with wirelesses and with modern pedal boards with buffers and stuff, the Friedman buffer bay is a good example. You're saying is the buffer from the Friedman power supply. The power supply is not actually what does the buffer, but the buffer bay, which is the patch bay on the pedal board, that's got the buffer in it. So my board actually has a Friedman buffer bay as well as two Friedman power supplies. But anyway, I know what you're trying to say. The buffer will help drive signal all the way through your pedal board and help it keep it pure and stuff like that. But some people back in the day, like buffers and stuff, it was just not something that unless they were using a Boss pedal, which was buffered. God, this is like I'm just going off on a tangent, not making any sense now, am I? But some of you out there know what I'm talking about with this stuff. But it's like, what I'm getting at is that before the days when people used to talk about true bypass or when people used to talk about buffers and all this stuff, a lot of the time, you had somebody plugging a curly cord into a fuzz face, into a Univibe, into an Echoplex, into a Marshall. There was no, this was like really primitive with a lot of capacitance going on, a lot of high-end cut going on in the signal. Okay, so the introduction of an EMG pickup to that type of rig would be like, whoa, what the hell is that? That sounds really different now. Your fuzz face doesn't work right anymore. Your Univibe is not sounding right. So as time went on, we got into the 80s and then in the 90s and stuff. Now, all of a sudden, there's way more pedals and way more options and wireless systems advanced. There was no wireless before the late 70s, So now there's like, you get into the 80s and there was Samsons and 80s and stuff. People started doing that. Well, that was preamping, buffering, and low impedancing their signal right out of their guitars, and things were changing. So, anyways, what's this? Any feedback from you, John and Dave, on Two Rocks? I don't know that much about Two Rock amps. I've played a couple at LA Vintage Gear, and they sound like great, big, good sounding Fenders to me, the ones that I played, but I don't know much about them. My main brands that I used over the years for boutique amps, other than Sir, were Friedman, Dave's amps, Top Hat. I've had a number of Top Hats, and I still have two. Comet, right? I've owned 3 Concords, so that counts. divided by 13. I've had 4 or 5 divided by 13s over the years. And I'm going to say that those are my main kind of boutique amp, brands that I've got, a fair amount of experience with. Am I missing anything that's in this room right now? There's an EVH sitting back there that I was using on something. I had an EVH 5150 in 2007 as well. And then, Fender, Marshall, Vox, own those as well. But there's a lot of these others that I just don't have a hell of a lot of experience with because there's only so much time in life, right? But I have heard quite a few amps, at least being around Friedman and stuff, and being in his shop sometimes and hearing things that come through, and et cetera, et cetera. Do you ever do videos on acoustics, or are you strictly electric? I was talking about a video actually that I did on acoustic earlier. I did a video for an SSL plugin. It was kind of on recording acoustics and how I do it, how I place microphones, how I EQ, how I compress things with acoustics. So that's a video that you'll find if you search for my name and SSL UAD acoustic, it'll pop up. So that was one I did. And then I've done a number of reviews, like for Guitar World magazine for acoustic instruments. Kind of cheaper acoustic guitars, actually. I did one for a guitar that cost $159 a little while ago. I was like, can I make music on this guitar? It ended up being a really good guitar for like under $200. And then I made a video for a series of Taylor guitars that, like a whole bunch of different new Taylors. Recently. But, it's pretty sort of rare that I make acoustic videos, although I enjoy it. It's just a different thing. Yeah. Des says, Happy New Year. Happy New Year to you. Of course it's acceptable to wish Happy New Year. It's acceptable to say anything that you want. Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, Happy New Year. Have a great time. Happy birthday. Happy birthday to you whenever your birthday is. Modern Vintage says, Friedman said he may not do a 100-watt EVH amp. Is that out of respect to the SL68 being the EVH amp? No, I don't think so. I don't know if that's true. May not. I don't know if he's... are you talking about like a Plexi style amp in the Friedman line? I think he wants to do something eventually, a vintage line where he does vintage amps. He's spoken about it quite often. Vintage style amps. I think it's better to leave the reactive load as a separate unit. This is like in reference to my new amp, P250 when it comes. So you can use it with any amp. The speaker tap line out is simple and cost effective. Yeah. Well, there are a lot of folks out there that have the reactive load or 2 notes capped or different devices like that. And, that was one of the only things was when we did the PT15, some people were like, well, I don't want to have the load and the IRs built in the amp. I'd rather have a separate load box, then I can use it with all my amps. Makes sense. With the PT15, we were just trying to make something where you could carry it around and everything was in one box. You literally plug in a guitar cable in and, a line out to the PA and maybe a speaker cable if you want to use a cab. And it was just very simple without needing to power different things, carry different things. That was the idea. But there's always going to be people that want to do different things and plug it in different ways. That's 1:34. We're almost done. I'm going to go another 15 minutes, 20 minutes maybe, and then we will wrap up, and I will get on doing some other work for the day. This has been a fun one, though. I feel like it's been relentless, nonstop. It's good. Lots of people here. There's been over 400 people online for most of the show, which is awesome. I'm glad you guys care and spend time with me. It's amazing to me. 251 weeks of this now. Incredible. Thank you. Thank you. Modern Vintage says, you really emulate, mime, replicate EVH's playing and tone perfectly. Thanks, man. I always feel like I said last week, that when you're doing that stuff, you feel like an actor playing a role and you're trying to deliver lines, But having said that, I will say that there's so much of that style that is probably in my playing because I love it so much. So it's like attack or attitude more than anything. I love the way he plays and phrases and his swing. And so I've tried to, put that in my own playing as much as possible. Because I have such an admiration for that stuff and it just resonates with it. I'm jazzed. I still get excited when I hear those records. It never gets old to me. Van Halen 1, Van Halen 2, fair warning, when the songs come on, I get just as jazzed as always. It's a little like AC/DC. I mean, when I listen to Back in Black, you know, or Highway to Hell, those songs come on and it takes me to that place and I'm super jazzed. I don't get bored of it. It's never like, that's a great song, but I never really need to hear it again because, you know, I've heard it a million times and it's not exciting to me anymore. I don't feel that way about it. I get like, super jazzed. So I guess it's a big part of what's like what I think of as music is the way that Eddie plays guitar. So I really appreciate you saying that, though. I still feel like, you know, it's, you know, you're like an actor delivering a line when you're playing Van Halen music note for note. Because, of course, the funny thing is Eddie never did things the same way twice. He probably couldn't even remember exactly what he did on the records. And it didn't matter because he's the guy. So he can play anything, you know. But he would just do something close to that. And we'd be like, yeah, like, you know, or that's cooler, or even whatever he did live, you know. But for us, you're trying to recreate the record all the time because it's like, well, that's the version, you know. If I can't do that, then I ain't shit, you know. So I don't know. It's fun, man. One of the things about Eddie was the joy in the playing. It was so much fun to play, and you know, just fun to try and get there. Just it was like really exciting. Guitars for Your Project has a super chat. How can I achieve more clean headroom on a P215 IR without breakup on stage and still go line out to front of house with IR? I have a power stage and separate SUR reactive load box. Power stage. Is that a... I mean, you could, if you want to use the power stage as the power amp, you could just take the line out of the amp and run it into your power stage and then use that and run the, you know, master on like 3 or 4 on the amp and run the channel masters on like 3. And then you're not driving the PT-15 that hard, and you should have as much clean headroom as you need then, in theory, you know. Just run the gain on the clean channel down around 3.5 or 4, run the master no higher than 4, and run the overall master no higher than 4. And take the line out, use the reactive load in the amp. You don't need to run into a cabinet because you got the reactive load. So take the line out with no IR, run that into your power stage, then use your power stage as your overall volume. Try that. You don't really need the separate reactive load with a PD-15, not necessary. Just by virtue of a, you know, an external power amp, you can now, you know, you should be able to get just about any level you need out of that power stage, I would think. Try that and let us know how you do. Yeah. Okay. I'm gonna go way down in the chat, guys. So please ask questions again at the end. If I've missed, I'm gonna miss a whole ton of them here because I gotta get to the end of these. Mid-frequency potluck on the Bogner pedals, maybe. See, you're talking about the amp with a switch, maybe. You know, I'm already thinking about things like switchable bright and switchable gain voicings and stuff like that. So I'm just not sure if another mini toggle or something is in the cards for doing something like a mid, but maybe. I'll think about it. Is it Bowie's birthday today? Is that right? That's awesome. What's my favorite record of his? I mean, I just have sort of an affinity for different eras of Bowie, you know? Like, I feel like the whole the Ziggy character was kind of like defining, because it was so like weird and artistic, and it was that time in the 70s where it was like that whole period kind of encompasses like okay, this guy's a really special artist because he's like so different than he's Bowie. Like that's when it was like, oh my God, he's like such a, like that's when David Bowie became like larger than life, I feel like. Now the Let's Dance record, like for which, you know, it was kind of, I don't think he was, like sellout would be a shitty word, because I was going to say like I've got a real affinity for that time because that's when I started really listening to music around 82, 83. So when that record came out and I saw that tour, that was my first exposure to Bowie, really, right? So that when you're 13 years old or whatever, is a magic time. So for me, that's like my first memory of him. So, and seeing him at the PNE or whatever the venue, it was at the I can't remember the name of the stadium in Vancouver. I was there on vacation. I saw the show with Peter Gabriel and the Tubes opening. It was amazing. But that spectacle and that record and those songs are forever embedded with Stevie Ray Vaughan on it too, because that was like many of our first time we're hearing Stevie. So favorite, I mean, maybe because of all that, and then that leads you down to discover, like, because I wasn't listening to I didn't know anything about Ziggy Stardust at that point, or Aladdin Sane, or any of, like, I did it, but that brought me to that first record. So I kind of got to go with Let's Dance, which is a weird choice, because like I said, I don't want to say sellout, but I think his idea was, let's have some hits. Let's write a record full of hits, on that. So, which totally happened, So it's weird, right? But that, it's almost like 1984 is kind of my favorite Van Halen record in a way, because that's what led me to Van Halen. Like, I mean, I was sort of aware of Van Halen before 84, but it was the same year. 83 was maybe the magic year where I really, I started listening to the Beatles and the Who and stuff in like 81, 82. And I got really into that. But then by 83, it was like guitar was I was playing a lot of guitar, and then Van Halen, Stevie Ray Vaughan, and like Stevie Ray Vaughan with Bowie, So I want to say that magic time around 83, when 1984, Let's Dance, Purple Rain, like, think of the records that came out, man, around that time. God, whatever, I mean, there's such amazing music that came out around that time. So, anyways, yeah, I'm gonna go with Let's Dance, because that was the gateway drug to understanding the rest of him as an artist. The magic, like for a lot of people, I bet with Van Halen, it's like it was like, I knew one guy, an older brother of a friend of mine, who said his first introduction to Van Halen was the background vocals. It was Dance the Night Away, because he's like never heard a sound like that in a rock track with cool guitar. But there's no guitar solo on. Like, you don't really get Eddie from Dance the Night Away. But he was like, those background vocals are insane. He was like listening to the, the Dance the Night Away chorus or whatever. And he was like, that's what really led me to Van Halen, was like that. And that's kind of interesting, So it can be the thing that takes you there, that you always remember, That's my point, I think. Do you ever use coiled cables? Not really. No, I don't really. Yeah. What was the idea of using a Macintosh power amp for Gilmour? That's a good question. I mean, it's a hi-fi, very clean. Maybe he just wanted a clean reproduction of, his pedals. That would make sense. Because to me, that's kind of a high watt. They're very, the way at least he would use them. He didn't set them very loud, I don't think. And he probably wanted a little, reasonable volume, high headroom reproduction of things like fuzz faces or big muffs and Chandler tube drivers and things, Yeah, so it was probably a headroom and cleanliness thing almost, but with still some nice tube coloration, Paul says, "Hey Pete, your Lake Placid Blues Sir Stratocaster has what kind of pickups in it? V63." Actually, no. It's got another kind. It's my only Sir guitar with different pickups in it. It has Ron Ellis pickups. Ron sent me a set. It would have had V60 LPs, and then Ron sent me a set to try, and I had them put in there to try, and that's what's in there now. So it's a Ron Ellis, I think probably his 50-60 set or something for Strat. And they sound great. They're kind of a little more actually on the sort of mellow side, like not mellow, but low output, I would say. I don't find them to be real, like maybe as high output and mid-saucy as, say, the Sir V63. But they are a nice sound, and it's a really great sound, and just a very musical sound. So I've just left them in there. Although I don't have an SSC in that guitar right now, I don't think. So I don't have yeah. So anyways, you get the idea. But great sounding pickups, and I love the Sir pickups too. I love them all. I mean, I use V63s in my signature guitar, and they balance great with the Thornbuck and the bridge. Austin says, you're in Pasadena now. Do you ever hit Kings Row in Old Town? I sometimes, actually. I walked by there last night, to be honest. nice vibe, good bands once in a while. They don't really do bands anymore, and I think it's sad because they did have great bands. Before the pandemic, like every Thursday night, if you used to go there, Austin, they would have a great kind of R&B band in there with terrific, great guitar player and really good singer. On the weekends, sometimes it'd be like Latin bands, or like I can remember one time like a 13-piece Latin band in there with percussionists and background vocalists, and it was like going off in there. It was awesome. And just like different bands, sometimes classic rock or blues or like different bands, and it'd always be really fun. But I haven't seen a band in there since the pandemic, and that kind of sucks. So I think they should do that again. But yeah, it's a pretty cool place. Yeah. What's the range of uses for an SM7? That's this microphone that's right here. It's, you see it a lot in radio, like radio announcers. Hello, and welcome to 106.9. No. You see a lot of radio announcers use it, kind of like they would an RE20 EV mic. But also rock vocals, you'll see a lot of people use them. Recently I saw my buddy Leo from Frog Leap Studios using this mic, and I think he uses it as his main vocal mic for recording kind of metal vocals and stuff. They work great for screaming, or for especially female vocalists, if they've ever got any kind of screechy or upper end that's kind of like mid, you know what I mean? Like with a female voice, or if they're pushing hard. These are the magic for that. You can't make them distort, and they just have a great sound for it's only about a $350 microphone, which for a studio mic is not a lot, and they just have a really, really terrific sound. So for many different things. But are you boosting your mic? Yeah, the only thing is they're kind of low output. Hello. Like I'm barely hitting the meter on my DBX 560 mic pre, and I've got it cranked 3/4 the way up, the gain. So then I'm adding a little bit more gain with a Manley Vox box and compressing a little bit within my mixer, my software mixer. And let's see what I got going here. I'm just looking at the Vox box on the channel. Hey, check. Yeah, see, I'm getting a ton of gain reduction that's like 10 dB reduction. Hello, when I do that. So I'm pumping up the sound with the Manley. So I'm using like a real analog mic pre and then using a digital mic pre to kind of add some juice to the sound, and I can't hear it, so you guys got to tell me how it sounds. But I think it sounds pretty good, right? The way I've got it set right now, I think it's pretty good. But they make a thing called a cloud lifter for this mic. That's like a little it's like a little inline mic pre essentially to raise the gain, and it's nice clean gain, doesn't add any noise or anything, or very little. And allows you to get a bit more output of a mic like this. But that low, they kind of have low output, but that makes it work well on I guess you could use it on kick drum, no problem, or on electric guitar amps or loud sources without any troubles. You need a relatively quiet mic pre, or else you're going to get, if you use any kind of crappy mic pre and you turn it up loud, you're going to get that the more gain you add, the more noise you're getting out of electronics of a pre. So just how it is. Okay. Taking too long again. I got super chats to get to. John, just finishing up a Parts Caster OG Pete Sig clone. Interesting. I want to see it. Anything special about the wiring other than the split bucker in the neck position 1? No. 500K pot and the bridge split on the tone pot. It's actually not a bridge split though, John. It's a series parallel for the bridge pickup on the tone pot. So big difference there. Wire it so that you can go series or parallel when you pull the tone pot up. And that's the one thing that's different. Thank you for the super chat, my friend. Thank you. Who else are you guys talking about here? What else are you guys talking about here? Let's see. You guys talking about mixing. Richard says that he likes to listen to a mix through car speakers, headphones, and go back from that to hear how it'll sound. Yeah, like comparing mixes in your car and on different sources is always really important, I think. How was Eddie able to clean up his sound so well using a wireless? That's the nature of a plexi. And, when he was using a wireless and he rolled down live, it was a nice, clean, buffered signal coming out of a wireless. He's probably using an 80 or something back then. And I don't know what he was using. I mean, for the first little while, he was using the Schaefer, right? But then after that he probably went to something. I bet he was using 80 or something by 84. I don't know that for sure, but that's my guess. But yeah, when you roll down, on a plexi, you get that magic cleanup. That's the way plexis sound when you roll down. It's incredible, awesome sound. Part of what I love about them is the cleanup and the rolled down tones. So less preamp gain equals more dynamic when you roll down. And there's something about, even when you're distorting the phase inverter or the power amp or the speakers or the different things down the chain, that's different than when you just do 12AX7 cascaded gain stages in the front end. When you roll down the volume, if the gain is if the distortion is kind of equally distributed throughout the rig, like just some preamp gain, phase inverter, power amp, voltage seg, speakers maybe if you're driving them really hard, all that stuff. When you roll the volume down on the guitar, it's very dynamic, But you know how it is. It's almost like if you add an overdrive pedal in front of all of that and then you roll down, it doesn't quite clean up the same as all things equal. Does that make sense? Like something about the gain only in the front end, you never get the same roll down sound as you do when it's throughout the whole rig. It's part of the magic of a plexi or an AC30. I mean, that's Brian May. Brian May was never really on 10 as far as I understand. Maybe once in a while, but the amount of gain that Brian May had running a normal channel of an AC30 on 10, right? And then a Rangemaster cranked up in front he had it was endless sustain and crazy amount of gain, right? When his volume's all the way up. But for many, listen to Tie Your Mother Down or any of those, where it's that great edge of breakup sound or kind of mid crunchy breakup. He's got the volume probably on 2 on the guitar or 3 or something to get that. And then you roll up for more gain or switch, different pickup settings, the series settings and all that, or the out of phase settings or different things that he had going. Yeah. Where do you typically put a buffer in the signal chain? Well, typically they kind of come, like I say, early on in the chain. Sometimes there's a buffer at the end and one at the beginning. If you're using wireless, you're buffered at the beginning anyway, right out of the guitar. So there is maybe no typical. But a lot of times, you'll see a buffer early in the chain, right when the guitar hits the pedal board. Maybe it's in a buffer bay, like the Friedman box, This Providence tuner I've got sitting right here. This is the Providence System Tuner Vitalizer and Junction box. This has a buffer in it, their Vitalizer, which sounds great, by the way. But so it's a tuner. It's obviously meant to come early in the chain, right? Your guitar is going to go into here, and then you've got this Vitalizer or through, so you can switch it in and out. There's a send and return here, so you could patch all the rest of your effects in here, and then come back out the output out to your amp. But that buffer will be early in the chain, first thing. Your guitar's coming in, getting the Vitalizer to vitalize the sound. Because the whole idea with a buffer is that as you're adding effects, then it's going to drive a low impedance signal through all those effects and keep things pretty pure, And when they're when you've got the effects switched off, and if it's true bypass and you're adding all that capacitance to the cables going through the effects and all that, it's going to minimize any kind of problems with all that, right? What do I think about a Bogner Helios for a plexi clone? I think they're kind of similar to a Friedman, to be honest. It's kind of his take on BE, as I understand it. So take that for what it's worth. Yeah. Great info today, says Ty. Thank you. Yeah, it's been a fun one. Yeah, I was playing guitar last night, learning Panama by Van Halen. I have a Tom Anderson Strat style guitar with bridge humbucker, playing through a 2553 Marshall, not quite nailing the tone. Suggestions? It's so many things, man. The Anderson with a higher output humbucker could be the thing. I mean, maybe you want to try an A2 9K, kind of pickup for something like Panama. You also need a little bit of H949 or H3000 micropitch or something for that sound is nice, for Panama. It's got a little bit of that still chorusing thing going on, so that can have a big effect. But I would say with that rig, if you had a little bit of H3000 or micropitch, maybe the micropitch pedal and maybe a 9K A2 pickup. Because those Anderson, if it's an Anderson with the H3 or something with big pole pieces, it's a very different sound, Be kind of really hot. So likely no product videos for a bit. How long is the first stage of the UK tour? Well, I've got product videos that I got to get done, so I'm attempting to finish for this. This will get done and come out Monday, the Revolt, and then I've also got one for this compressor coming, and also one for the Valbrook mid boost. So there will be a few this week, and I'm only gone for a month for the first stage, and then my plan is to come back and record a few videos when I get. I'm coming back to LA in the middle of this run. Then going back, so it's a little different. Usually I go over there for 2 months. This time I'm just going for a month. Come back for Bic, and then going back. Sorry, can't talk. John says he's going to be 60 in 520 weeks. Jeez, dude, you got a while. Don't count. Who's this? Let's see. Andy Rex the Cam says, best guitar and technical info show. Thanks, man. I don't watch TV regularly, never have, but I do watch your show. Hey, that's an honor, and I appreciate you being here. Thank you. Thank you for the super chat as well, my friend. You're always here. I appreciate it. Chris Moore says, I have a 1979 JMP 2203, no mods, use a reactive load into a Helix. The amp always seems to need a boost. Any pedals or mods you can recommend? Send that amp to Dave Friedman and have him do his magic. Yeah, thank me later. Just have him just make this sound a little less anemic, a little tighter. Just give me a little more gain out of the amp, a little more magic, and make it sound a little less woofy, and he'll know exactly what to do, and you'll get that amp back, and it'll be the best sounding Marshall. That's my recommendation. You'll love it. You'll love it. Just little tweaks here and there, a couple little tweaks, couple parts, and you can make that thing sound terrific. JCM 800 is a really good amp. It's just a few parts off from being great, in my opinion. Because what we're talking about with the JCM 800 is there's not a heck of a lot of differences between a lot of sort of modern Marshall takes, a lot of the newer stuff. But they just didn't quite have it with the 2203 or 2204 circuit. Barry says, hi, Pete, have you tried the Seymour Duncan 78 humbucker? I have, and I did a video on the 23 different Van Halen style pickups a while ago, and the 78's in there. It's a good pickup. And the design of the 78, the kind of the 9K A2 is the basis for so many other pickups out there, including not far off from my signature Thornbucker 2 pickup is a Thornbucker wind, so it's a different wind. And it's unbalanced coils and stuff like that, so it's a little different. But we're not far off at all from what we're talking about here. A2 hot for that gauge of wire. It's not really hot, actually, but it's like if it was a PAF, it would be hot. PAFs are, anywhere from low 7s to 8 point something K, generally speaking. 78 is 9K. So it's on the upper end of PAF. Yeah. Yeah. Does anyone know of a great new Bassman type amp, says Richard? Don't Fender do a hand-wired something or other? Are we talking about a 410 Bassman? I would look for a Victoria or the Fender hand-wired, or even those LTD. They seem good, just take one to a tech, and you can mess with speakers or different parts or whatever, but I always thought the 410 Bassman reissue was one of the best things they did, Sound great with pedals. I was in a band with a guy with one for a while, so I remember that sound. For 6 months I toured with a dude playing one of those that just used a full tone, the blue over there. What was it called? The flat mids one. I can't remember. Full drive into that. That was his main sound. It sounded great. Really good. Have you ever jammed with fellow Canadian Todd Kearns? I have. I love that guy. Sweetest guy, smart dude, deserves all the success in the world that he's received and earned. But I saw Todd Kearns play with his band Age of Electric in Edmonton in probably 1989 or 1990, and I remember him from back then. He can sing anything. He can play great guitar, he can play great bass, and he's just a hell of a guy. He's a really, really nice guy. You see a guy like that, you think a little intimidating. He's super tall. He's like 6'5" and like super long hair. He's like a great big guy, and then he just like kills it. He's the nicest guy. Like couldn't be a sweeter kind of, he's a great guy. So I really like Todd. But anyway, I did a gig with him and his Canadian cohorts in their cover band. They have a band that does all Canadian great rock songs, cover band called Took. And Todd fronts it. And I did one show with them in Winnipeg a while back, subbing for Corey Churko. He was out with Shania, I think, and he couldn't do it. So I did it. This is a number of years ago now, 4 years ago or something. And it was so fun. A lot of work to get ready for it, but it was a blast. Yeah. Yeah. What else have we got here? Let's see. Sorry, I know I'm going over here, but that seems to be a demand. There's 407 people still online. Let's just do a longer one today. A little bit. We'll go another 10 minutes or something. I have a Victory Sheriff with series effects loops, says Magnum. Because it's post-phase inverter master, the effects in the loop aren't sounding as good. Right. As an effects loop in Fender amp. Why is that? Well, generally speaking, because what's happening is loops aren't really compatible with post-phase inverter masters. When you're driving into the phase inverter, so if the effects loop is coming somewhere in the preamp chain, but you can't put it after the phase inverter, so it's coming somewhere in the chain on down, and then you've got your effect loop, and then you've got another tube, right, the phase inverter, and if you're running the post-phase inverter master lower but cranking up the preamp volume on the amp, you're driving through the effects and then into the phase inverter, and the phase inverter is distorting. So what you're getting is the effects getting distorted by the phase inverter. So you're probably finding your delays and your reverbs don't sound great. Or great. It's just not exactly. If you want clean delay and reverb, you're probably finding they're a little mucky and affected by that phase inverter. So does that make sense? It's because you're putting your effects sort of still in front of part of the preamp, and they're getting distorted by. I mean, technically the phase inverter is part of the power amp, but you're putting a tube after your effects that's getting distorted and hammered a little bit by level, and then you're bringing down the post phase inverter master to lower the volume. But you're getting some of the effect of almost as probably as though as if you were running your effects in front of a plexi, right? So there's no way around that, other than to not use that loop and do effects a different way. You can use something like a Fryette power station and put the effects in the loop of that and lower your volume, do a load and reamp, that kind of thing. Yeah. What else we got here? Let's see. You guys are talking about Bowie, so I'm way back in the chat. How about I'm Afraid of Americans with Trent Reznor? That was God, that was great. And Trent Reznor looks like a psychopath in that video. What a great video. It's so cool. He's like chasing him, right? Down this, like through the streets of New York or something. It's so cool. I think it's New York. Yeah. All right. Let's see. Just looking through the chat here, guys. Do you know the wait time for your 412? I don't, but I can't imagine it's super long. I guess it depends on, if there's, supply chain stuff, wood, Tolex and stuff, but it can't be crazy. I don't know, though. That's a question for a SIR dealer or cs@sir.com if you want to email them. The letter C, the letter S at sir.com. The Rover saying, Peter Gabriel, Sledgehammer, great concert. Thanks for remembering. A little off subject. You know what? But on subject, I just heard today that there's a new Gabriel single, out, and I haven't heard it yet, so I'm going to go listen to it today at some point. And also, he's touring this year with Tony Levin on bass and Manu Katché. Sounds like that'll be cool, right? So that's awesome. He hasn't done an album for 20 years, I don't think. Like at least a studio album. Guitars for your project with a super chat. Thanks, man. Regarding my earlier chat, how can I use the line out of PT15 for the power stage without IR and go direct with IR in front of the house at the same time without an external reactive load box? Okay, I see what you're saying. Got it. Yeah, you're going to need to use your reactive load. You're right. You could take a split imagine taking that line out and then using some sort of, because it's a line level signal and it's low impedance and stuff. So you could take a splitter of some sort. There's got to be something you could use. No, sorry, no, that doesn't make sense. Never mind. You're right. If you have a reactive load, just use that. And if you have a reactive load IR, maybe it's not the reactive load IR because you probably would have mentioned that. So okay, take the line out of the head and run the IRs on that, and then go into your reactive load to load the amp down and use the unaffected. It's probably an original reactive load, so there's no IRs in it anyway. So just take that and run that to the power amp and cabinet. Yes, you're right. You're going to need to do that with that setup. There might be another way to do it that I can think of, but I can't think of it right now. Sorry, Guitars for Your Project. I didn't understand, but that totally makes sense what you're saying now. I get it. Ron Ellis pickups, Paul says, like on your telly, sound great. Yeah, the telly sounds ferocious. I love the pickups in that guitar. He makes a hell of a telly pickup. Yeah. And I'll go down through the chat. There's a super chat from John Deshane. What's up, man? Did a live jam last night with the TB2 in my Alder Partscaster. Sounded absolutely killer with the B100. Super clear and punchy. That's the Thornbucker too. Sweet and warm. Awesome. That's what I like to hear. Great, man. Yeah, it's a really, really good pickup. It's a no-brainer. It's just an easy... It's a Thornbucker, but I just said wind it up hotter. Wind it up to 9, because we were at about 8.7K with the plus. So wind it up hotter. Same wind, same coil type of, because we got a slightly unique wind with the coil balance. Let's wind it up to 9K and try an A2. And we did it, and it was like, that sounds awesome, and that's the pickup. It was very easy to create, to be honest. Yeah. What do you guys think about the Sir Corso? I really liked it, the first one, but the one I got, I'm not going to say. I don't know what they ended up doing, but I think they might have changed the design a little bit from the first one that I tried, so I'm not sure, but it's not made anymore anyway. You can't get them. But it was a cool amp, cool idea. It was like a 5-watt little jobby with a built-in resistive load, I think, and then you could run it out to a recording interface, and it was cool. Ryan says, please do live stream from the Europe tour. Oh, yeah, I will. I'll be doing the Sundays. I might have to modify the time, like when I'm on the road, and I'll take a closer look at the schedule and see. Let me actually take a look right now while I've got you guys here. I was looking, because I know I got Master Tour open. I can look at our schedule for next Sunday, and I'll see where we are. Get some idea here of... So I'll be rehearsing Sunday... Can probably still do it, but it just depends on the time. 7 till 8. Probably an evening one. It's going to be... sorry, not an evening one. I'll be evening, and you guys will be morning. Might be around noon or something, though. It's almost noon anyway when I do this, isn't it? But yeah, it'll have to be next Sunday I'll do it in the evening, and it'll be around I think I can do it. It just depends how late we are rehearsing. To be honest, that's our last day of rehearsal before. So I bet we got a break. We probably got to cut out early. So I think it'll work next Sunday. Okay, so I'll let you know on Facebook and on YouTube on a little post. Does anybody read those posts on YouTube? Because I can post on there, but I don't think a lot of people look at them, But that's where it'll be. I'll post on YouTube, like where you put a text post as though it was Facebook or something. And I'll do it on my Facebook as well and let you know what time. But I think that's going to work because last day of rehearsals generally before you go, then we'll go to the venue the next day to do a production rehearsal. They got to break down everything and then move it overnight to the venue. So I bet we're done by like 2 p.m. that day or something, and they're breaking down and moving everything out so they can get it on the truck and get us set up. So shouldn't be a problem next Sunday to do it right around this time, and I'll be somewhere in Liverpool. I love it there. Taking any downtime in Europe, somebody said before I just lost that chat. No, I don't think so. I mean, I'll have days off and stuff in the UK, but I'll just be in the UK for this one. Yeah. Ian Ferguson said, Dave has said during Tone Talk he's so backed up he's not taking any more mod work. That's probably true. Yeah, somebody was asking about modding their 2203, and I recommended him. You know, you could try is that hot mod thing from you know, the George Lynch one, which, ooh, yeah, I just remembered. I've got another one of those I need to make a video for, don't I? Yeah. Let's take a look at something here before I go. Here's an exciting thing. Little unboxing. Come on. Let's have a little fun, for God's sakes. It's going to be so serious talking about buffers, and I got a buffer for you right here. It comes in a can of some sort. What does that say? Comes in a bean can. I didn't know. I swear I didn't know. So you got to open the can with a can opener? Well, I got to take it home then to do this. That's insane. That's incredible. Oh my God. I'm going to knock out a little video for this. Gonna put a few days into it. It's going to be really good. That's incredible. Oh, I'm so sad that I can't listen to it today. But not that sad. God, that's hilarious. I had to get one. Oh, you bought the Mighty Mite pickups after watching that video. An original? Sorry, I'm skipping around here from the fart pedal to Mighty Mite Eddie Van Halen pickups. You got the Mighty Mite, like original, whatever they're called, 1200, or is it a new one? They did sound great. The original Mighty Mites in that video were ripping. And the Super Distortion was great, too. Yeah. Yeah. Do you have specific routine for days you have a show, any mental or physical prep? Generally speaking, some coffee, and generally speaking, some Yorkshire tea on stage, quite possibly a glass of wine or a cider. That's about it. And then let's go have some fun. That's it, really. No, not really. You know, the thing is with the classic rock show, with the way the tour is structured, when we're on tour, I just have to make sure I'm fed. It's a long story, but it's like the way that we deal with food and stuff is kind of funny. It's not fancy, but it's always easy to do in England. So generally I'm going for walks, sourcing some food for lunch and dinner, and I quite enjoy it, actually. So it's, you know, and what is for lunch or dinner, says my knees hurt. Well, I don't know today, to tell you the truth. I'm not that hungry yet. So I got a little food here. I'm going to do some work here before I consider anything. And then I'm actually going to try and cut out of here at a reasonable time today and go get something good to eat for dinner. We'll see. What else we got here? We all live vicariously through your experiences, like my unboxing of the fart pedal. You can get one too. No, I know what you mean, Rover. Thanks for being here. I appreciate it. Let's see. Karen says, tried the UAD Bucks and Betty amps in. Going through the presets, did not find a Van Halen adjacent tone. No, the Bucks and Betty's a Fender. That's his clean Fendery one. You'd be better off trying the BE plugin for that. Yeah. Okay. It's really time I should go soon, but I'm still having fun. So, and I've got a super chat there to grab. Is it anti-telly to have a belly cut and an arm bevel in the body? You know, Sir would say no. He'd say it's fine, because that's what he's all about. It's kind of fixing the problems. The problems, if you see them as such, you know. So whatever makes you comfortable, man. I think an arm bevel looks cool on a telly, actually. I like it. Yeah. Peter says, I have a Seth Lever that reads 8.33K that I would love to be a bit hotter. Yeah, I mean, basically then look for a slightly hotter PAFE thing. 78 might be right up, like a 9K, or the Thornbucker too. Something like that. Duncan makes great stuff. I'm always a Seymour Duncan fan, because I bought them all when I was a kid. I had a great time. The biggest thing is to me the magnet. Like if you get an A5 59, for example, it's going to be louder, but it's going to be brighter too. So it's a bit different sound than something like the Seth Lever. So if you like that slightly more muted top end of the Seth Lover, kind of that warmer thing that they do, but you wish it was a little hotter, then I would suggest probably going to a higher wine, something like the 78. You could try. Yeah. Let's see. Any true bypass pedals that sound close or identical to a Boss DS1? Geez, I don't know. That's a good question. I'm not sure about that. Ooh, I just got hungry, actually. Might be time to go get some lunch. It just happened. Let's see. Ben Coombe says about the fart pedal for that brown sound. That's right. That was pretty fun unboxing, even though we can't get into it because I don't have a can opener here, so I have to take it home. I should probably take video of that for the video. Yeah. I'll do a little iPhone video at home. It's gonna be good. It's gonna be good. Should I record a whole song with it? At least a 30-second piece of music, right? Yeah, I think so. Like, I should do a track. It's not going to be a full track, but it's going to be great. I guarantee it. It's going to be great. I'm eternally 12 years old. I'm sorry. You're too kind spending all this time today. I'm having fun. I mean, you guys are too kind because you guys are hanging out here. And nice Lebanese restaurant in Liverpool. Lots of good food in Liverpool, man. I'll tell you what I like. I like Bold Street coffee. Great coffee, nice breakfast, nice English breakfast, but with a little modern touch to it. It's not just, beans and, black pudding and all that weirdness. They're very nice. And next door, there's a place called Marais, Maray, that is slamming. It's more like tapas, small plates. Great in Liverpool. Good times, if it's still there. Yeah, I'm actually really looking forward to it. We're rehearsing in Liverpool, so I'm excited to go there and hang and spend a few days back there. It's like a little home away from home. It's a very nice town. I love Liverpool. Could live there. I think I like it more than London. London's a little bit I don't know, overwhelming. I like going there and everything, but it's kind of a big city, as we know, that just, I can't get a read on it as much. It's like Liverpool feels like, I like smaller cities these days that have a great vibe, and Liverpool has that, so it's really cool. Plus I can go to the Cavern and be a Beatles nerd. What's my take on Nuno? Absolutely love his playing. People in the industry rarely talk about him. Yeah, I mean, he came along at a time when, guitar was going through a bit of a transition then. We're talking about 1990, 89, 90, 91, and then you get to 92 and, grunge happens and it's over for shreddy guitar, but he was like ripping on guitar then. So he only had a couple years to kind of like really, plant his flag or whatever. But he's had a great career, after that. Like Extreme did well. But, More Than Words is really the pivotal point, because what you had was a ballad that allowed them to cross over into the 90s and have a massive hit. It was a massive hit. And it wasn't hair metal shred guitar centric. Not that they were ever that really, but there was that element of obviously, ripping guitar, 4-piece band, guys with hair, right? They're not Poison, they were killer musicians, but that all kind of went out with the bathwater like in 92. It all did. Guitar solos got lumped in with the hair and the, singing about cherry pie or whatever. You know what I'm talking about? It all got lumped in to that and all got thrown out as one big, which was, like I watched the Metallica movie the other night, Some Kind of Monster, and Kirk Hammett was talking in 2002 when the movie was made about guitar solos, and he's saying how I don't want to follow trends just because it's not cool to play a guitar solo. Like, whatever, I don't care. Like, sort of like, we're Metallica, we can do whatever we want, so we don't have to follow trends. And like, whether the trend is to have a solo or not to have a solo, like, screw all that. If the song deserves a solo, then, and I totally agreed with that. I mean, it was like, and I remember that time because I remember when you couldn't play a guitar solo. I mean, I was in a signed band in 2003, and it was like, yeah, we can't really do solos. What? So the solo I'd just play, there was one solo on the 40 Foot Echo album that was kind of a solo. And it was really like more like a the My Sharona solo or something without all the flash. It was like very simple bands, blues rock, to the point, 8 bars, and then it's over. Right? And yeah, you couldn't really do it back then. So anyway, my point being that the thing that made Nuno like to where they could cross over and be relevant and still have a career and all that stuff even further into the 90s was really more than words, I feel like. Because here was this simple, it's a great song, right? At the end of the day, it's just a simple song with a nice melody, a beautiful modulation in it. I mean, whether you like them or not, that was a cool little piece of music. So it's like that really set the tone for him to, for them to still, like one big hit can really have an effect, Had it just been the He-Man, Woman Hater, porn and graffiti stuff or whatever, that like the funky stuff or the shred guitar kind of stuff, I don't think that would have been enough to carry, to the level where he did, because they stayed relevant for through the 90s with songs like that, So anyways, does that make sense? I don't know, just my opinion, but that puts him in a little more unique spot than, the fact that song came out. And, I kind of like that. I was listening to Finish What You Started the other day, which is one of the coolest Sammy era Van Halen tracks, and it has DI Strat on it without a typical Van Halen guitar solo. I like that element of that period of time where some of these bands did something different than the distorted guitar thing, and they kind of threw a bit of I guess Van Halen always kind of did that with Happy Trails or like the different things, Big Bad Bill, where they threw in some left of field thing. But anyways, Ray says, see you here in the UK in Shrewsbury. Cool, man. I'll see you there. I like Shrewsbury. I will see you. I will see you. When you play your Sir SL, do you play it in normal mode or lowered voltage? Always in low voltage. I love it in the low voltage mode. And it's just a little more reliable as well. You're not cranking 100 watt, driving it hard. You get a little less volume. It feels great. It's a little spongier and stuff. It's cool. Still need to introduce you to Seymour Duncan. He's a great guy. Phil X is good friends with him too, says Arthur. Cool. I'd love to chat with him. I did meet him once when I was a kid. And he was very nice to me. And I was nothing but a, 13-year-old little nerd, guitar-obsessed kid. And he came and did a clinic back in the 80s. I mean, people didn't really do that back then. And he came and did a clinic about tone and pickups and amps and stuff at Mother's Music in Edmonton. And he was very nice to me. I remember chatting with him and being like, this is amazing. I love, this guy's here in my hometown. He was like a, rock star gear builder to me back then. So it was so cool. I bought a lot of Seymour Duncan pickups back in the day, man. I tried, a lot throughout the 80s and the 90s. So, yeah. Okay. I think I should split you guys. I've gone way over. Make sure I got no more super chats here that I missed. I don't think so. And you guys are the coolest. So I kind of don't want to go, but I'll see you next week from Liverpool. And let's see. Horse says Porno Graffiti is one of the greatest albums ever. I listened to it a lot back then too. I mean, he was really ripping, and I appreciated his the Flight of the Bumblebee trip that he did, and some killer stuff that he came up with. But then they had great solos and songs as well, and vocals and stuff. I don't know where I was going with that, but anyway. Arthur says, that solo on My Sharona wasn't very good. Come on. I know you're kidding. I love that solo so much. Yeah. All right, you guys. I'm going to split, but what's my favorite Seymour Duncan pickup? These days, probably the 78, I guess. But there's so many good ones, man. It's hard to pick. The Antiquity humbuckers are great. Another Duncan. I mean, the custom I appreciate these days. But I bought them all, man. I had the custom 5, the full shred, the blue Saraceno Trembucker, the tons of 59s and different guitars, the jazz. I mean, I've had a gajillion Seymour Duncans over the years, and single coils, Alnico 2 Pros. I just remember trying a lot of Duncans over the years. So always really cool. All right, everybody. Have a great week. Thanks for being here so much. Thanks, Ben Coombs. Have a terrific week. I'll see you next Sunday from England. Take care.